Good evening, everyone. We are going to open our workshop. We have a presentation on the comprehensive plan, which Phil Kroll and myself and also Eric Cousins will be presenting to the council, and then following that will be an executive session. So we'll start with the comp plan presentation. Good evening, councilors. How are you?
Evening.
We're good.
Thank you.
We have a presentation for you. Based on the last council meeting, there was an interest in having an update on what hasn't been completed as part of the comprehensive plan. We're going to provide you with some highlights. Thank Liz Allen and also Eric Cousins for putting this presentation together. And with Phil and Eric's assistance, we're going to go through this with you. What we are presenting tonight is the kind of information we're going to be presenting to the three committees that will be part of the strategic planning process, the one having to do with growth and then quality of life and investment. And there will be more information as well that they'll be receiving. But this is, I think, a good example of some of the issues that still need to be addressed as part of the comprehensive plan. As you remember, there are 207 strategies that were established as part of Auburn's comprehensive plan. There are ongoing issues, short-term and long-term. In terms of the short-term, long-term, these are really probably the two categories where we have issues that we're going to cover with you this evening, give you an overview on. The subcategories are land use ordinance amendments, studies and planning, capital projects and investments, and then other. Some of the items are undone due to changes in situation, lack of funding, lower prioritization, and so forth. And some items exist solely to meet grant funding requirements. What you're going to see are the short and long-term strategies, not yet in progress. Again, this is an overview. In terms of Lake Auburn, you can see we need to review, revise septic requirements regarding the district. Then you have Lake Auburn Taylor Pond. There's an update of the phosphorus control ordinance. And Phil, if you go back and I think if you go to that, it gives an explanation. You can't read this, but hopefully we can. This comprehensive review was part of the 2015 budget, or proposed 2015 budget. It wasn't funded, so that's the reason why that hasn't been acted upon. Then you have Taylor Pond, revised sewer connection requirements. You have a long-standing impact fee requirement related to original construction of public sewer in 1970s. The fee could be financial deterrent for connecting. This needs to be addressed. So there are some issues that would need to be worked out to do this. I'm not going to explain all of these. If I did, it would be a long, boring presentation probably. So there are explanations on why some of these things have not been acted upon. Again, you can see the water supply. There was a recommendation to do an update of the stormwater management requirements, including phosphorus control ordinance, and on the aquifer protection map and protect significant aquifers. At this point, I'm going to see if Eric has anything that he wants to add for this particular page. Any thoughts?
Just on some of these, like the top one, Lake Auburn Review Revised Lake Auburn Overlay District. There was a proposal done at one time by Dan Bilodeau to change those ordinances. And at that time, the council wasn't interested in changing them. We did go to the planning board, but some of these items have been considered in the past and decided that they weren't the way that the council at the time wanted to go. I guess one of the benefits of the strategic planning process is sometimes I think I would have the sense that, well, we brought that there and they said no, but I forget sometimes that, hey, we have a brand new board and maybe there's new ideas, and I think the strategic planning process could help us know which one of those we should bring back to the council over time, so that we're not seen as just putting things in front of a new board repeatedly to try to get a different outcome. So I think this could help with that.
Thank you. Next, continuing on land use ordinance amendments, under historic, we have create site design standards for non-historic buildings in or adjacent to the historic district. Then under archaeological, update archaeological resource standards and submission requirements. Under recreation, open space, review recreation and open standards for residential developments. Then under housing, revised provisions for mobile home parks, and under housing, assure that codes allow owners to improve properties in older neighborhoods. Eric, any comments on this page?
None specifically.
All right.
Mr. Manager, did we skip a couple of panels, or was it just me?
No, I think this was the next slide.
Before historic, can you back up?
Sure.
Yeah,
That's what we looked at before.
This. Okay, housing, I don't have, when I'm looking at my side panels, I see land use ordinance amendments, then studies, let's see, studies and planning, emergency services, then the next one says housing, next one says historic. I guess I saw having to do with Taylor Pond. Where is that?
Right there
Lake
on this
Auburn, I mean.
particular slide.
Yeah.
It's the
so
one that
did.
we were just on?
Okay, I've got it. Don't mind me. All right, I'm right there. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Phil. And I think this is the final slide on land use ordinance amendments under transportation, update public and private road standards, and then require new developments with a large number of employees to provide facilities for transportation demand management where feasible. This one sounds very similar to what we're trying to do with the Lewis and Auburn Transit Committee, and looking at whether there are businesses that would be interested in having bus service in order to get employees to the business and then have them come home afterwards. We have a working group that's working on that, which Councilor Gary is part of, as well as Jody DeRisco and myself. And then finally, revise access management provisions along major roads. Any comments on this page? Eric?
The Center Street study that we did not implement had a lot to do with the access management provisions. So if we wanted to take another look at that, there's two sides to that. Some people see more standards as too restrictive, and others, we may be able to realize some benefits to the transportation system by being more restrictive.
Thank you, Eric. I'm going to turn it over to Phil to do the next section.
So in the short term, for studies and planning, there are emergency services, and what was highlighted was to conduct a feasibility study for public safety services and facilities, including regional considerations. Even though we have that in this location, because it was only a space needs study that was done, nothing was really implemented, so that's why we kept it into this section. The space needs study has been completed for police and fire. However, no further steps have taken place. Economic development, develop of a labor to business marketing plan, and then also a skilled labor force education plan. A lot of this work is happening. A lot of it's happening with other organizations that are part of the initiatives regarding developing a strong workforce. But it's not an initiative that has been created by the city of Auburn, and so that's why it's left here. But what Peter had mentioned was that this will be important to actually take a look at when moving forward in the strategic plan. How do we implement workforce development as part of our growth within the community? Eric? Housing, develop program to allow transition of urban single-family neighborhoods. Schools, develop a child-centered facility plan. Water supply, develop water conservation plan. And then stormwater, develop a watershed management plan for impaired water bodies. So again, these are actions that, no direct specific work, although I think if you were to look at schools, I think you would definitely see develop a child-centered facility plan. I think the schools are working towards that. It just may not be meeting this definition of the comp plan.
Let me ask a question. You're referencing that other work is going on other places. How do we make sure that this is informing or being informed by that work?
Yeah, a great question. So that's part of the comp plan update that needs to take place. I think that as we're going through this and working through a lot of these different sections where we are identifying some work that's being done. Right now, the initial update has just been direct staff involvement. Now I think we need to, and I think a lot of this will come out in the strategic plan, as we work with those committees and having key personnel and community members at those committee meetings. I think this information will come out. We'll be able to update this more thoroughly than we have right now.
Yeah, because that'll be important.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I had one comment, Chief. These are bullet points, obviously, but the water supply and then developing a water conservation plan, is that the kind of thing that you're expecting the strategic planning committees to be working on such things, or is that just the comp plan?
Well,
I
this
don't
is
see
one
where
of...
that was in the comp plan, but.
Right, this was in the comp plan. It's one of the things that has not been implemented or acted on. We'll have a conversation about it, and all of you are going to have an opportunity to be able to attend these committee meetings, of course, and we'll come back to you with a report. You're going to be involved in the process as we go forward. You will be doing the prioritization at the end of this process, so if that's a priority that the council wants, pick as a high priority, then you could. If not, then you don't have to.
So under historic, just develop a city historic resource list. Again, archaeological, develop city archaeological resource list. Transportation, develop a program to work with large employers to explore their transportation demands, and then develop a standard for appropriate development along Riverside Drive. Eric, anything to add on those? No questions? As you can see, there are a lot of studies and plans that were listed under the comprehensive plan. And even though we're only highlighting the ones that haven't been done, there have been many that have been funded and have moved forward. And as we get into further updates, I think that's part of that next process, is to dig into some of those that have been completed. Again, transportation, assess the potential for expansion of passenger rail service, assess improvements to the Washington southbound Rodman intersection, and establish streetscape and site design criteria for the major road corridors. These are our gateways that come into us.
Just, we have talked a little bit through the budget process about specifically Washington Street, and that may be something worth prioritizing over the next year or two, is really looking at streetscape design and some standards to improve that gateway. And there are people at the state and regional level working on the passenger rail service, but we haven't locally done anything to really look at the potential within Auburn. I think it's still possible that it could be located in Auburn, but it's being done more on a regional level.
On the Washington Street corridor, we have to deal with the state all the time going through that area. You're going to bring them to the table as well? Is that the idea of this?
Yes, we will. Yeah, all the potential stakeholders, will have them come participate. Some cases, they'll be providing information. Other cases, they'll be there to observe. This next category is capital projects and investments. Again, transportation, promote rail industry growth. And then also improve Center Street, Turner Street, traffic management, improve pedestrian and bicycle access along the Route 4 corridor, expand fixed-route bus service and other transit services necessary, similar to what we talked about before. Then, continuing on, redesign the Pleasant Street, Turner Street connection, continue to provide public access to Taylor Pond with recreation, and then for sewers, use bonding or other strategies to extend sewers to New Auburn industrial areas.
Before you go too far, when you keep talking about the corridors there, like the Route 4 and Center Street, Turner Street, for the last 50 years that I know of, we have spent millions of dollars in these areas, Center Street, Route 4. And yet we've got all these side streets that are running through our city, like, for instance, 3rd Street that I've been complaining about for the last 2 years, that isn't safe enough to put a motorcycle on. And at this point, if you've got it in here somewheres, I haven't seen it yet, but at this point, it isn't in there. I would think we would have to have something that says that we're gonna worry about the small inner streets in this city. 2nd Street, we have met with Public Service, I believe 5 years ago, 3 years ago, complaining about sidewalks and streets that are unsafe to travel on, and not anything have we had any meetings come to us as a council saying, you know, maybe we need to put some money in these areas. When you start talking Center Street, Turner Street, Route 4, Washington Street, you're talking millions of dollars to get these to change to make somebody happy. When we're talking these littler streets that are around the city, and not only in New Auburn, but that's my area, all around the city, these shortcut streets are just going to hell, and nobody's doing anything about it. Not our director from Public Service, not our management that we have above him. They just keep getting worse instead of better. So it's something that we really need to put our mind and wrap it around in your strategic planning.
Well, the strategic planning is for the council to help you determine what your priority is going to be. I think there's a lot of work that is done by the city in terms of our streets, but keep in mind, when this report comes back to you, you are the body that will be determining what priorities you want to pick and what direction you want to take going forward, and how important these different issues might be to you as a council.
Mr. Manager,
Yes.
a term ago, we helped fund a study for passenger rail up in Augusta. Whatever happened to that study? Did the city of Auburn ever get their money's worth and get the outcome of that study or a report from it?
What I know is that we are participating in a group looking at passenger rail service, and we continue to participate in that discussion. And there's a meeting coming up this week, as a matter of fact, where there'll be some discussion about that rail service. I don't know what's going to happen regarding that issue. We could have someone come and give a presentation, if you'd like, at a future council meeting to give the council an update on what's going on regarding that.
I mean, it would be nice when we fund studies or put money into projects, we get a report back when the money was spent, what it was spent actually for, and what was the outcome, instead of just every time we get a request for money and we think it's a good idea, we say, okay, we'll do it, and we fund it, and to date, I haven't heard anything. Granted, I took a term off, but the council that came in after me should have found out something, and as far as I know, they haven't.
I don't know what happened before I became city manager, but we do want to give reports back to you, like on the ag zone study, for example. There was a report to the council on that. And I think that we can arrange for a report on what's happening with that issue. Continuing on to the next one, thank you. Other. Phil, I'm going to give it back to you.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember too, these are projects that have not been funded, have not had any work done. So, and there's nothing necessarily in place to actually execute any of this. This is just an update from the entire plan that was put together in 2010, so. So under other, Lake Auburn designated responsible management entity for septic system maintenance. Municipal services hire a grants coordinator. For schools, improve the quality of the city's school system. Again, this is one where it's tough to actually put that on here, but there's nothing that we actually tagged with it, but obviously the schools, improving the school system. And through each new initiative that they're working on is doing that. Taylor Pond, the control of the invasive species, and then the habitat, establish voluntary protection advisory program.
Could I ask,
Go ahead.
could I ask a question, please? The first one, Lake Auburn, designate responsible management entity for septic system maintenance. I know, I have my own septic system now that I've moved, a downside to the move, but I'm responsible for that. So out in Lake Auburn, everyone who's around there, I'm assuming they have their own septic systems, correct? Aren't they responsible for it? Why should I be responsible as a taxpayer for
They-
someone else's septic tank?
They are responsible for maintaining their own systems. What we find is a lot of people don't do what's necessary to maintain their systems, have them pumped regularly. And the idea was, through the discussion that we had at the comp plan, was, especially on the Lake Auburn Watershed Protection Commission, that there was a desire to have somebody that sort of oversaw that, educated people, encouraged them to maintain their systems, and if somebody wasn't maintaining them, that they could try to encourage them to do that. So I don't know that this would be a municipal position. The details have never really been laid out, but I don't think that it would make sense for the city to use taxpayer dollars to fund a position. to
Not at
manage.
all, not at all.
But failing systems are a threat to the
Well, I
environment,
mean-
especially in the watershed.
True, true. I know that there are a lot of private homes that are not on Lake Auburn, and perhaps they're doing the same thing. And are they being watched as well to make sure that they're being helped in terms of not getting to the point where they have a major problem that impacts their neighbors next door? So I think this kind of thing, we'll need to really discuss that at length. Thanks.
My question has to do with the school department. Would you explain a little bit about improving the quality of the city school system? What do you mean by school system?
So if you look at the comp plan, it was actually a pretty vague statement that was listed in there under that chapter. There was no further detail. It was almost, I'm not sure. I wasn't on that committee that drafted that, but it was, if reading through it, it's, let's put a couple things referencing the school, and these couple bullets were listed under the comp plan for schools. I think that as we move forward, and especially as we begin the process for a new comp plan, I think that'll be important to really bring in schools and what the schools are doing, and make that part of that process, maybe a little more than maybe was involved in the last one. Because you'll notice when you look through it, there's only, like I said, there's only a few bullets for schools.
So this would, I'm assuming that we would be involving the school system, to discuss the other one as well as this one to see, okay, what caused that to be there. Let's look at it together. That would be a good group problem-solving situation.
And it'll be important to define some of the initiatives, because, here we are, 8 years later, very different people. Eric was involved in the process at the time, but really, what was the intent behind a child-centered plan?
Right.
And so, defining those a little more would be helpful as we move forward.
Thank you.
And as you see, there's a few more here under Habitat. There's been no work on this. When we did request an update from other departments, Lake Auburn Watershed has certainly wants to be involved in this if this initiative ever moves forward. However, there's been no work done in this area anyway, as far as a community education program for Habitat, documentation of forestry practices, and then the wildlife corridor improvement program. And then Androscoggin River develop land trail management plans. The city has not been involved in that, but certainly there's been a lot of good efforts that have been done with the Androscoggin Land Trust and others on these initiatives.
So, what we're striving for is one vision, one plan, one voice. Again, 3 committees, one on growth, one on quality of life, and the other one investment. And what we presented tonight comes from the 2010 Comprehensive Plan. The folks that are involved in the strategic planning process, of course, will be looking at other issues that are going on in the community, which we've talked about previously. Like, for example, do we try to develop the potential of the Androscoggin River for events and activities like what Providence, Rhode Island does, for example? Do we try to do something more with sports tourism? We have the study on sports tourism. The report was given on that. How do we incorporate that in what we're doing in the future? And that, again, will come from you, and in terms of whether you think that's a priority or not, and is it a high priority? And then you also have things like parking in the downtown area. So this is an opportunity to develop a strategic plan for the city government, which is informed by the comprehensive plan and will help us develop our work plan going forward in the future. Yes, Counselor.
One of the things that you mentioned is this prioritization process. Do we know
Yes.
what that looks like, or do we determine that? Because that's going to be very important. That's taking,
It will be very important. To answer your question, I'm not sure what it looks like. My sense is that what's going to happen is you're going to have these committees that we're going to work with. We're going to ask them what their priorities are based on the issues that we talk about. Those will come to you as a council. Then you have an opportunity to be able to prioritize what they are recommending. My own suggestion is if you pick a few priorities and work on them, we might be more successful than a lot of priorities, but we'll see where the discussion goes.
in terms of the next comp plan, how does this play into that?
I think it helps feed the next comp plan. Phil's talked about it, Eric has as well. I mean, I think the discussion that we're going to have will help set the stage for the next comp plan update. I think that we're going to have to do that update within the next 3 to 5 years. So what we're doing here, I think, will definitely help in terms of setting that stage.
Thank you.
Yes.
A quick question. One of the things that was discussed previously, I brought up the need to probably, bring to the extinct pile those things that probably aren't necessary. And I think keeping that in mind, saying, is this absolutely necessary? Do we need this? Or is it doesn't make any sense at this point that we would just get rid of it? So I think we need to keep in mind that that might happen as well.
Good point. Councilor Hayes.
Yeah, going back to Holly's comment, I think this is important towards revision of the comprehensive plan, because I think through these committees, it could build excitement. It could really bring forth some individuals that really want to do the next step and be involved in, the revision. So I think it's going to be very important that we all get to know the people that are going to be part of these committees and that we approve them, because I think hopefully we can work with them and encourage them either to run for the council or be part of the comprehensive plan process update.
Well, I think that's a very good point, and that in the resolve that you're considering tonight on the strategic plan, that you will be approving the people that serve on the committees and also the final report in the charge to each of the committees as well. I've been involved, I think, in 3 to 4 comprehensive plans in my career, and it is exciting, for some of us anyway, to be involved in that kind of process, so look forward to it. Yes?
Manager, thank you. I think that's really important that we do it that way, but one concern I had was to make sure that that the council sets the goals, and you mentioned the charge. Because I heard Eric talk about how so many times somebody comes with a great idea, and then it goes to council and it fails. Well, that's because it wasn't the council's idea. So they were asked to make a decision on something that wasn't their idea to begin with. And that's my concern with these kind of committees, is if the council is behind what they're doing and they actually set the charge, then chances are, when they come back with the results, we're going to be behind it. But if something's going to happen and all of a sudden we have a night where we get a report and we got to either accept it or deny it, then it's probably not going to work. It's probably going to fail, because I see some of these things that I don't even know if we even want to go down that road. To have a committee spend hours and hours discussing one of these bullet points that this council has no desire to even begin to institute would be just a waste of time, if it's a matter of policy. So I'd like to see it go the other way around, where we set the priorities or we set the goals of the committee before they begin work. That's what I'd like to see.
Well, I guess what I would say, there's a lot of details here that will need to be worked out. I don't know how much you want to get into the weeds on this, but I think your fingerprints need to be all over this, obviously, as a council. And, you know, you are going to have the final say in terms of the report and what you prioritize.
And I think, just piggybacking on what Councilor Titus said, this iterative process, so that when the committees come up with basic ideas or initial ideas, it comes to us and we're able to respond to them before anybody gets too far down the road. And that's why this prioritization process, which should be really well thought out before we start.
And I guess knowing too that it's not going to be a long process. So each committee, and again, some membership of one committee is probably going to fall on to one or two others, but that it's really going to be a high-level consideration, because in the time allotted and looking at all the items that really haven't been maybe completed or even really considered, it's going to be a short window. So it is going to be a high level. There's really going to not be a lot of detail. I think it is going to be going back and looking at studies, reports that are out there that we've maybe forgotten about, and maybe again kind of bring them together and doing just what we saw tonight. These are the items that have been considered before, but these committees are not going to be able to go into much depth on any one of those items.
I think you're probably right, Councilor Hayes, but I think if we are able to have good communication with the council, come back and give updates as we move along on the process, that should help us in terms of the direction and making sure that we're headed in a direction that the council wants us to and is supportive of as we go forward.
Mr. Manager, I too share their concern that we're trying to reach out too far. We've got a mixed new council. Some councilors come back. We're just getting used to a city manager. We're trying to pull us together. The city is building confidence again because we've had such an overturn of city managers. They get used to one and they leave so quick. I think we need to narrow the scope for the short term, get that under our belt, and then broaden it as we go forward. I agree that this is a short-term window for the first phase. I'd rather do it in phases, get something tangible, something measurable, something small that we can wrap our hands on to get a win, versus trying to reach out too far and not get everything done that we would like to do or do it well.
I think it does have to be manageable. As I said before, I think from my experience, it's probably better to pick a few priorities and do well with those priorities. That'll be something that you'll have a chance to be able to participate in as we go forward. And in terms of the process, what we're talking about, again, to reiterate the process that we're going to have, the Growth Committee is going to meet for a couple of months, and then the Quality of Life Committee for a couple of months, and then the Investment Committee will wrap it up with a couple of months, so we'll finish in the spring. So there will be an opportunity for each of those committees to meet 3 to 4 times, have discussion, and then have their thoughts, put on paper with recommendations and some priorities for the council to consider. My suggestion will be that, we not take on too much, and I think the communication with the council will be really important in terms of the direction that we're going in.
Do you think it's possible to outline this process and have us look at it before we start? Because you're making some suggestions about how you think the process should work, and it might be helpful for us to see that and say, here's some points where we need to make sure the council becomes educated or informed.
We can provide more information for you on that. We're talking about it on a regular basis,
Okay.
so we can do that as we go forward. Any other questions?
I appreciate your putting all of those unmet needs, all together for us to take a look at, because I know I've been thinking about that as the next step, and so you provided it. Thank you for doing that.
The team approach, I want to
Yep.
thank Phil and Eric and Liz. Thank you very much. Next is an executive session with contemplated litigation pursuant to 1 MRSA Section 4056E. Do I have a motion?
Motion to go in executive session.
Second?
Do I have a motion from Counselor
Walker.
Walker and seconded by Counselor Fournier? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. We will now enter into executive session. Thank you. Now declare the council out of executive session. I'm going to suggest that in the time remaining, that maybe the council would like to have a open discussion on topics that you might like to have workshops on in the future. That's one suggestion on what to do with the remaining time that's left before the council meeting.
Definitely, if we could somehow have it recorded so that we can have a record of it, and, you know, just everybody have a chance to maybe talk about some things that we haven't before. Everybody must have at least 1 or 2 points, and maybe just kind of make it brief. We're not going to try to sell anything during this workshop, but maybe bring it up for the future discussion. So maybe we'll start to my right, and Belinda, we'll just go down with the list.
Well, I'd like to see more type of discussions like what we're having now, where the council can sit like this and discuss things that we're either working on or things that we'd like to just put on the table to get other councilors' input. We don't always come, and we're not really supposed to have meetings in our office as a group. We're supposed to meet in the public, and this is the perfect opportunity. In past, we was told, people have said, constituents have said that we meet too much behind closed doors. So I think this is a welcoming time for us to say what we want to say to each other right here.
One of the topics, and I've mentioned this to the city manager, is the public health in Auburn, which isn't really addressed anywhere else. Lewiston has a pretty robust public health committee that we used to be a part of, but are no longer. And I think both public health has to do with physical activity, the built environment. We know about lead poisoning prevention. So to go through the process to have that be brought up and at least have a presentation about it at a workshop.
Of course, the big issue that we all talk about is that we need more economic development. And I think for us sitting here on council, but I think for the public, we need more exposure of what's happening in that regard. I think that, once a month, that we need an open session, a workshop item to have the department bring before us the projects that they can talk about in public. I think there's going to be those evenings, too, that we may actually have to take some into executive session. I think that, going back to even this trip now to China, I think there should have been more discussion of that up front, because I know I've had some communication. There was a reaction to that when that was announced. That type of thing, if that's being planned, needs to be out to the public. Because I think there is a concern if this trip was, and it is important, but maybe we should have considered it, the expenditure of our money to make the trip. Because I think there is a concern in the public right now that we do not fund it. Private parties has funded it. And does that put us into some jeopardy? So I think that type of thing, I think we need to have more knowledge of what's going on. And I think it would be helpful with respect to the planning board. I guess I was a little concerned with what I heard before us a week ago, that, I didn't get the sense that the planning board was truly planning. They're doing what they have to do as far as reviewing projects before them, but we talk vision. Planning department and the planning board particularly should be working on vision and reacting to maybe some of the things that was up before us tonight, recognizing that some of our ordinances need to be updated. So, to me, economic development is a key before us and the public.
Well, I have a couple of things, but one of them had to, again, talking to you about the reporting, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again, more committees, and we're starting to do that, which is really important. Committees reporting what's going on back to us, of the however many we've got out there. Some maybe once a year, some once a quarter, some once a month. But that'll be very important going forward, I think, and it's already helped what we've seen so far, so we need more of that. But two things on my list that we need to talk about dramatically. One of them is, again, the creation of a finance or budget committee. I'm going to bring that up again. And if this council it has to become before a resolve, or we have to decide in a workshop that we want to do this, get it going sooner if not later. And then also talk about next year's budget as early as we can. You know, I personally like to see a 0% increase, but you know, obviously everybody's got their own ideas, but that discussion needs to be had long before we're into budget season for planning purposes. Because again, when we're in that 2 or 3 month period, everybody's scrambling, nobody's really got time to focus on any one thing very much, and we end up not doing as good a job as we could. So I think it's got to be, and with the help of a finance or budget committee that can help them, they can feed back information to the council and give them more information, detailed information on various departments or processes that are going on. And so the council doesn't have to do all the heavy lifting, the committee can do a lot of that. So those are the kind of things that I'd like to see.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. One topic that it's a global concern is homelessness, and I have had some recent acknowledgement of the fact that we do have people who have no place to go, and it's coming to Auburn, and when I was at Augusta, it was prevalent, and we have that problem now. We have people who hang out at the library and would stay there all day and later if they could, because they have no place to go, and it's warm and they get water and that kind of thing. So I think we have to, it's a big issue, and it's related with the health that was mentioned previously from Commissioner Lasagna and Councilor Lasagna, and I do think that we can probably couple that together. A second one I was thinking about is just working on our business-friendly theme as to the perception of us as a business-friendly city and the reality of the business-friendly atmosphere, suggestions for improvement wherever they may be, and also causes to celebrate the business-friendly environment and atmosphere here in Auburn. We have a lot of young people who have really taken a big risk in coming to our city, and they want to make a good go of it, and they want to provide a service, and they also want to maintain our old buildings, because that's where they're going. So I think if we can have some discussions about that, that would be really good. Along the same kind of vein is to also enhance, we as councilors, to enhance our ability to make informed decisions by having access to or being presented information relevant to upcoming issues, innovations, and topics. And that's kind of like what you were saying in terms of getting the information beforehand so that we know what we're talking about. That would be something. I think that would be a common theme for everything, in fact. So Councilor Titus, it's a good idea. Thank you for that. And finally, just maintaining an ability to stay on top of the budget in terms of expenditures, like an intermittent reporting out from the manager, because where everything is going, and so that we can know what the bottom line is in all of the areas of expenditures and all of the departments, and that will help let us stay on top of things. Those are just a few of the areas. Thank you.
I think a couple great things would be if our departments would come in front of us and tell us some of their real vision and goals that they plan on meeting for this next year. A lot of these have requested a lot of money, and of course we we always say no to somebody, or yes to somebody, or maybe, and then the vote gets voted in, but we really don't know what they're gonna do with that amount of money. Public service is very expensive department to run, and for the city to afford to keep going year after year. I would like to know what roads they're gonna take care of, which ones are gonna get fixed next, what is their vision plan? I would like to also see that from the police department. We ask them to do 100 different things a year, but it's very hard to know exactly what they're getting done or not done. I understand they put out these signs that tell you to slow down when you're speeding, and they get reports from them, but in many cases, they don't have time to really tell us exactly what's going on in what area, what's their plan for that area. And I know they're shorthanded in some cases. We probably should know more about that. What is it doing to their department to be shorthanded? What are the vehicles like? I would like to see reports from the departments coming to us, and it doesn't have to be an hour long, just something that's very important to them that should be important to us, and then maybe we should be doing the same thing on our thoughts. Maybe we take 10 minutes and say to them, we think you're going the right way, or we think you should be going to the left and not the right. So I just think it's a great opportunity if we would do this once a month, or an odd week or something. I don't know how we can do it all the time, but we need to do it and do more of it so we know what's going on in the city.
I would think at some point, we might challenge or discuss the fact that something I heard on the radio this week. It said by 2035, we're going to have an increase of 29 jobs, and we're going to lose so many jobs. And you can see it happening already. You go into a grocery store and you have to check yourself out. You know, there are going to be some occupations that are going to be eliminated. We're not the Board of Education here, but if our population decreases and our job decreases, I guess maybe we'll come out even. But I think we probably should, it was a state study that was done, came from the Department of Labor, and I think that's kind of scary. And we should be mindful, you know, we can get more businesses here, but if they're employing fewer people because fewer occupations exist, then we're going to see what we can do to compete. Do we have the right kind of people? You know, probably we're talking about probably retraining them for some other occupation, so I hope we're not training them for occupations that are going to be obsolete.
Well, it's very important. You mentioned that too, Councilor Young, because of with the new school going up, and they have a huge plan for workforce development or training having to do with future job growth, and that's a perfect opportunity to plug that in. They've already got a plan, but make sure that we're planning for the future and training new graduates.
May I also, oh, I'm sorry.
Councilor Gary and then Councilor Lasagna.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. It's okay to speak, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem?
I'm not there yet, but yes.
What I'd like to see us discuss how the ADAPT plan interacts with the form-based code in regards to what we had discussed about making our downtown area here more walkable and to try to encourage businesses and people, well, businesses to relocate and grow here, as well as to attract people into the downtown area. I mean, the ADAPT plan was great vision when it first started, but now we've got the form-based code, and I kind of have a sneaking feeling that they kind of squunch each other out. So we either got to do one or the other. And the way things are, we've got to figure out what we're going to do in regards to the mess we have over around the post office, the way people get in and out and how they park. I know the good police chief tried hard to try to figure ways to do permit parking and stuff, and still get the bus in and out, and I guess there's some issues with the bus. So I think maybe we should, now that we have a little bit of downtime before spring comes, we should try to come up with some sort of plan so we can hit the ground running this spring and know what we're going to do and what projects we're going to put in the CIP to further our advancement of making this downtown more walkable and maneuverable, and to take consideration all types of physical challenges. That's the first thing. Second thing is, I would like to see us to be able to do more events here in the parking lot on the other side of the parking garage. That's a great opportunity to bring in the farmers market and other venues. We can clear out a good percentage of the parking lot and get them to park in the parking garage and still have a maneuverable area space that's contained. That would be a great draw to the people, to get them to come down to the downtown to visit the existing businesses, and maybe if businesses, people that own businesses that are looking to locate, if they say, oh, great, look at all these people that are coming here, maybe they would like to come too, and maybe we can sell some more of the properties we have over here, or maybe even get them talked into developing business over in what I affectionately call Platts Field over by the Esplanade, because that's a great piece of property that's underutilized that we could develop, that's close to the downtown, and it's part of the walkable plan. And it would complement what we're trying to do up around the library with the Troy Street project, the library, and the Hampshire Street. And then the other thing, yes, I'm wound tonight, and I haven't had coffee. I'm really excited to have been able to participate in the garden project at the Newbury Street Garden. They've got 40 beds. Most people got two garden plots, and we've grown just about everything manageable. And since I met the income guidelines and lived in the downtown, in the neighborhood area, I was privileged to get a spot, so I made an awful lot of really nice people. I learned an awful lot of gardening tips, and I want to see if the city manager can come up with some other land that's not just in the downtown Target area and that takes money from the CDBG funds. I would like to see if there's any spare pocket change elsewhere that we could use at a minimal cost to put other gardens around the city in other neighborhoods as well. Because for a minimal expense, it pays great dividends. It may not bring in a lot of revenue, but it builds community spirit and pride. It also, depending on what they have for plants, it could either beautify the neighborhood with flowers or supplement their dietary nutritional needs. And I've used some of my garden produce to put together a few meals for the city council. So the city has not been funding the last few meals from the city. And I take pride that for a little bit of elbow grease, I've been able to do that.
We appreciate it.
Very nice of you to do.
I would like to make a suggestion, as we're looking for places for additional gardens. The East Auburn School has a huge hothouse that I purchased with my husband's money when he passed away, and they could always use a resurrection of the garden. And the students ate a lot of the products there as well that they grew. So,
Council Lasagna.
Just quickly, I wanted to piggyback on what Councilor Fournier said about being a business-friendly community. We can do all the work we want, and one of the things we do have to do is think about marketing, which you haven't really moved forward on that. But if we do draw people here, we want to make sure that this whole community, including staff and us counselors, are supportive and friendly and helpful to those who do make the sacrifices and the investments in the businesses in this community.
Anyone else? Councilor Hayes?
I guess this is maybe not a workshop item, but maybe it is, but to discuss, areas that we should discuss with Lewiston in joint session. It was mentioned, the riverfront, if we're looking through strategic planning, that should be a common interest. Transportation, the same way, we're talking rail, and of course, we've already had discussion, but, even the airport, we begin to, a lot of us lose sight of as being a, shared asset. And, the tourism, sports tourism was mentioned, and I think we've seen that that's not, we can't go it alone. So I think having a discussion of subjects that we should be talking with Lewiston on a council level, and maybe, putting together an agenda that at least twice a year getting together. It used to be maybe quarterly. Yeah, I think we need to open a dialogue.
One more thing I wanted to add too, Mr. Manager, is a lot of what I've heard today, I think is stuff that's in progress or was put forward a few years ago. Councilor Walker talked about getting the department heads to give us, there is a road study, or rather a chart showing the road repairs and what's in line next and when, where and how. I don't know if that's been updated, but a couple of years ago I saw one that showed what each year they plan to do. And the city should, the council should see that on a regular basis so that we can say, wait a minute, I'd rather do this, and we can debate that. And the other thing is our economic development department as a whole. Again, a review of the organizational chart and what each person is doing and how they're doing it, because I think there was some slots in there that their design was to promote Auburn, to market Auburn, to work with it with business friendly. All that stuff was decided a couple of years ago. And what I'd like to do is see if there's been any progress in that area, and if not, this council needs to just kind of push for more progress in that area, because I think we have the tools already in place for a lot of that stuff. But we aren't informed, we aren't kept up to date on what's going on and how our money's being spent, especially in the economic development department, which includes zoning as well as, code enforcement all the way down to, marketing. And I know that we've had some issues with personnel there. We need updates on that, going forward, what we're going to do. So that would be a great workshop item.
I have some good notes here. I'm sure Phil has taken notes as well. Got a little bit of time. I'll give you a little feedback if you want it. Certainly public health is an important issue. We could do a workshop, if the council would like to do a workshop. Economic development, I've talked to Michael Champions about having an update on economic development. I think that is definitely important. The China trip, when the mayor and economic development director get back, it'll be very interesting to hear about their trip. I can tell you that the funding of that trip is being done by Mr. Wong, and in China, Mr. Wong has made commitments and promises to the Chinese government on his investments here in Auburn and what he intends to do in the future. So a big reason why the mayor and the economic development director are in China is to add legitimacy to what Mr. Wong is doing here in Auburn. From everything that I've seen, and I've met Mr. Wong, I think, 3 times, he is serious about continued investment here. And he's talked about a mushroom factory, and he's looking at other things as well. So that's a big reason why it's been done the way it has been done. Right, wrong, or indifferent, I think it is an opportunity for the city. I think on the planning board, I was really pleased to have the chair of the planning board here. I think having the committee chairs come and give updates and reports is a good thing. Later on in the meeting, Karen Scammond's going to give an update on the Board of Assessment review and what's going on with the Board of Assessment review. As city staff, city manager's office, we're going to work to try and, with the help of the city clerk, we're going to try to bring more of those committee chairs here, have more of that dialogue. And we want to help you enhance your ability to make decisions. That's obviously an important role for us as staff. You're the policymakers. It's our job and our responsibility to try and help you make those decisions. I think in terms of having departments come, department heads, perhaps department directors, maybe under communications like we're doing with I'm thinking out loud here, under the committees, where we're having the committee chairs come. Maybe we start doing that with 1 or 2 department directors periodically, so that you have more information, more knowledge of what's going on in the departments, and have an opportunity to be able to ask questions of the department directors or me or Phil. The population projection is very troubling to me. I was at an AvCog meeting probably 2 months ago when I heard that projection, and it astounds me to think that that is going to be the situation. We have a lot of multifamily housing units that we're going to be adding to Auburn in the next year to 18 months. We also have single-family homes that have been built. We've had about 20 that have been built in the last year, I think the number is. We have over 100 of the multifamily housing units. So more people are going to be moving in here. We need people to be able to be employed by companies. So I think that obviously it's the council's role to decide what direction you want to go as a city. Do you want more growth, and what type of growth do you want to see? What are your thoughts on economic development and so forth? Some of the other issues that you mentioned, we should discuss things that are going on with Lewiston, not just Lewiston, but the surrounding region. There are a lot of discussions that take place with the Lewiston Auburn Transit Committee and AvCog and other regional entities, and maybe that's something that we can have more periodic updates on as well. I think it makes sense to have, from my perspective, a couple of joint workshops with the cities of Lewiston and Auburn, or Auburn and Lewiston, each year. And I think Councilor Hayes said at one time it was quarterly. Certainly a couple times a year, I think, would be a good thing. I'll stop at this point. I was very interested in hearing what you had to say. Phil and I both took notes, and I think the discussion was helpful. I don't know if you have any comments on what's been said.
I'd like to just put out there one more thing there. There was 3 of us that was asked if we would like to go to the age-friendly AARP seminar that was done in Augusta, and we took that chance to go. And I think we all learned a lot. We have not put it all together in writing. Mrs. Fournier, Councilor Fournier, is actually going to get it organized, and we're going to report back to you a lot of what we heard and different seminars that they kind of put on up there so we could listen to. And one of the ones that struck me, and I think a couple of our other counselors that were there, was they talked about the college for nurses. And they talked about how short the nurses are and how short they will be in the next 5 years. And that's the big thing about why the colleges are going to really kick it up a notch or 2 notches, why they're going to educate nurses, I'm not going to say for nothing, but give them that chance to be able to move up into the situation where they can become a nurse, because hospitals are definitely going to be, in the next 5 years, are going to be probably half-staffed with nurses if they don't kick this into gear. And they talked about that for about 15 minutes, and it was a doctor and other doctors that were sitting there as a panel, that anybody could have spoke with them after, you know, if you were at their level, and pretty hard for me to talk to them people at their level.
Stop it.
But really, they came across with some great ideas and telling us what we really need to do in the near future here, or we're going to really be in some deep trouble. And when I hear people saying the community is losing people, we're shrinking, we're going down, they said that it's been holding for quite a few years, and it's scary because it's only holding, it's not really growing, except for the coastal cities and towns. So we have to figure out what we have in place, what we have that's maybe as good as them or better, and how can we draw some of them people that are moving to these coastal lines, get them to come into the inner cities. So, you know, they really, it was a great day. It was a long day, but it was a great day to go there and listen to all of the speakers that talked to us. And then, you know, after, of course, you sit at the round tables, and everybody has a chance to give their opinions and stuff. And Sabrina was with us from the Recreation Department, and I believe she took a lot of notes as well. So we will be reporting back to the council here, we hope within a month's period, so we don't forget half of what we were told. So
And one of
thank
the
you.
big buzzes were they were going to hook with the high school kids and develop a program so that the kids could go to their college, and by the time they graduate, they'll be able to be nurses and be able to work in whatever venue they'd like to go in. And since they'd be going to high school, since they'd still be in high school, it would be pretty much at minimal to no cost for the students to complete their college degrees.
You're right.
If you recall, a few years, well, quite a few years ago, we had pockets of nursing programs throughout our university system, and then they decided to take those out. Now this is a reversal of that decision, which is a good decision to make. And what's good about it is the first year would be at no cost, the tuition would be at no cost to the students, so that's coming in within the next year or two. So they've got to get it all together, so.
We have about 5 minutes left. What would the council like to do?
I'd like to take a break, please.
Second that, second that.
All right, very good. We'll reconvene at 7 o'clock. Back again, folks. I call this meeting of September 17, 2018 to order. Before we begin, do I have a motion to elect a chair pro tem counselor to preside over this meeting in the temporary absence of Mayor Levesque?
I'd like to make a motion for David Young to be our mayor for the evening, pro tem.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Okay. I have a motion from Councilor Walker and seconded by Councilor Lasagna to elect Councilor David Young to serve as Chair Pro Tem to preside over tonight's meeting in the temporary absence of Mayor Levesque. All those in
Are you
favor?
taking any other nominations?
Yeah.
I can. Are there any other nominations?
I'll nominate Andy Titus.
I'll second it.
Okay. All right. Any other nominations? Okay. So we have two nominations for the Chair Pro Tem Counselor. How would the council like to proceed? You want to have a vote on each? What would you like to do?
Have them before, I suppose.
Is that what we do? We vote on each one, Sue,
I think they should vote with the first nomination and then
and then the second.
Okay. All right. So, the first nomination, I have a motion for Councilor David Young to serve as the Chair Pro Tem. All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay. Is that three? Okay. All right. I have a motion for Councilor Titus to serve as the Chair Pro Tem. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. All right. I think, Councilor Titus, you've been elected to serve as the Chair Pro Tem.
All right, there we go. Thank you all. I will start out by, would you join me in the Pledge allegiance to the flag, please? Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, first item on the agenda, the consent items. All items with an asterisk are considered routine and will be enacted in one motion. There are no separate discussions on these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and put into the normal sequence of the agenda. Does anybody have a wish to do that with any one of the consent items? Hearing none, do I have a motion for the consent items?
Motion to accept the consent items.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed? Unanimous vote. All right, next item on the agenda. We have an order. Does the council have a desire to take care of order number 75-091-72018? Oh,
Point
that
of
was the
order.
consent, that's
That
right,
was
that was
the
consent,
consent,
yeah.
yeah.
Minutes. Next, we discuss the minutes of, does anybody have, note any errors or omissions in the minutes from the previous meeting of September 10th, 2018?
No.
Hearing none, what is your pleasure with the minutes?
Motion to accept the minutes as read, please.
Second?
Any discussion? Then we put it to a vote. All those in favor of approve accepting the minutes? Opposed? 7-0, passes. All right. Next, we have communications, presentations, and recognitions. I believe we have a communication from the Board of Assessment Review, Karen Scammon.
Good evening, members of the council, Manager Crichton. I'm Karen Scammon, City Assessor, and I'm just going to give you an overview of the Board of Assessment Review and what's been going on in the past year or so. A little
Welcome.
background, I'm not sure if everyone is
I
familiar.
don't know
with
if your
the Board.
mic is on.
Pull it a little
It's
closer.
just-
Yeah, bring it, yeah, there you go.
I usually talk very loud, so I'm trying not to belt it out. I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with the Board of Assessment Review. I know that Counselor Hayes is. He was kind enough to serve on our board for a time. So I'll give you a little bit of background. The Board of Assessment Review is made up of 5 full-time members, 3 alternate members. At this point in time, we do have a full board. We don't have alternate members, but we do have a full board, which is quite unusual because in the past few years, we've been running with 3 people on our board and sometimes 4. So it's great to have a full board right at the moment. Let's see, our board members have staggered terms, staggered 5-year terms, and so we have one board member who happens to be in the audience, whose term is up October 19th, and we are hoping that he would like to serve again when his term is up, so we keep our 5-year board. We have one requirement for our board, and that is that they attend training once a year at the MMA Board of Assessment Review training. It's an excellent training, and all the members of the board have gone, and the members of the board that we've had have gone more than once. They go every year because there's always new material to learn, so that's basically the only requirement that we have to serve on the board.
Excuse me, you have 3 temporary positions, or what did you call them?
We have 3 alternate
Alternate ones. Do you
positions
have
that are
anybody?
vacant at the
Okay,
time.
so people listening, the audience and at home can submit their
Certainly.
application?
You can fill out an application with the
Okay,
clerk's office, which would be great.
thank you.
The board's made up of Auburn citizens, and it operates the same way a court of law would operate. There's a chairperson who presides over the hearing, and the assessor is there, the taxpayer is there. You can have an attorney present if you prefer. You have witnesses, the witnesses testify, and the board obviously makes the decision whether to deny or accept the taxpayer's appeal. A taxpayer will go to the Board of Assessment Review. I probably should have started with this. Their first step would be to file an abatement with the assessor's office. If the assessor denies the abatement, by law, they have the right to go to our local Board of Assessment Review. So that's when they would appeal to the Board of Assessment Review and have the board decide on their request for an abatement. We went years without appeals, and then we've had in the past, from 2015 through 2017, we've had a couple per year, which I think is very good. And we had a big one this year, for the 2017 tax year, that actually withdrew. It was a $4 million abatement by the Walmart, and they withdrew their appeal, which was excellent. So basically, that's our Board of Assessment Review. I don't know if I've covered everything that you would like to know about it. Like I said, it's a board that doesn't have to meet periodically. They will do their yearly business meeting at one of their appeals. If they don't happen to have an appeal that particular year, then they have one meeting a year, and will do their business meeting then. But other than that, the only time the board meets is when there is an appeal. And we hold them at night at both the taxpayer and the assessor's convenience. They're held here, they're public meetings, anyone is invited to attend, they are publicly posted, and they're held in council chambers, and they're all taped.
Any questions for
Have any
Karen?
questions?
I have one for you.
Councilor Walker?
I've heard from a couple different people that have either tried to appeal or wanted to, and they were either out of time or overtime, and I'm not sure what they meant by that. Can you tell us something about what your time limits are, or how you fall into that category?
Sure. To begin with, a taxpayer has 185 days from the date of commitment to file an abatement with the assessor's office. The assessor then has 60 days to decide to accept or deny that abatement, from the date that the taxpayer is notified, the taxpayer now has 60 days to appeal to the Board of Assessment Review. So there are strict guidelines. Title 36 of the state statutes dictates all of those guidelines.
So if I was going to file that with you, it would have to be within 180 days that I didn't pay my taxes, or?
No, 185 days from the date that the assessor commits the tax to the tax collector.
Is this your end, the end of the cycle? Is there one more step beyond?
There is. If the Board of Assessment Review denies your appeal, you have the right to appeal to Superior Court. If you have a non-residential property that is assessed at $1 million or more, you have the option to go straight to the State Board.
Thank you.
Councilor Lasagna.
Thank you, Councilor Titus. Ms. Scammon, when you say abatement, you mean that their tax levy is reduced?
That is correct.
It's not, okay,
Yes, that's correct.
thank you.
Yep, and I do mention that the first time ever, in all the time I've been here, 17 years, this year, well, for the 2017 tax year, there was a poverty abatement that was appealed to our Board of Assessment Review. Now, as you know, the assessor does not determine poverty abatements. That goes to the council. However, our Board of Assessment Review is charged with taking on that appeal if the taxpayer chooses to go forward.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, that's it. Thank you very much, Karen.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, that brings us to our first open session. I'd like to open up this session of the night. Members of the public are invited to speak to council about any issue directly related to the city business, but what is not on this agenda. I now open the open session. Anybody who's interested, please. Please come forward, state your name and your address, please.
Joe Gray, Soapers Mill Road. One question I have for the assessor is, from the date of commitment, but does the person know what the commitment is? Do we know what the date is? We know when we get our tax bills, but when we get our tax bills from the date of commitment, how many days does that put you in the hole? That's the only question I had. But I'm here tonight actually to ask you to think about the ad hoc committee for agriculture that we had previously that cost this city's taxpayers $40,000 and you have yet to address. The transmittal letter that was sent from that committee to you included 2 recommendations, and you guys have been batting around the 50% rule and the 10-acre rule, and those are just minor recommendations. The major recommendation was on the front page, and it says, creation of a permanent committee in the city of Auburn to advise city council on policy development and implementation of agricultural, forestry, and resource protection initiatives similar to agricultural commissions formed in other communities in Maine and nationwide. Now, that's something you guys really should address. When we talked about it in the committee, we talked about it being similar to the planning board, but with a focus on agriculture. And we set up a procedure for actually populating that committee, and that should be a council-appointed committee, because it could have a serious impact on the citizens of the city. The way that we had envisioned it, it would be able to handle case-by-case problems or situations that came up. For example, one of my neighbors has, over the past 4 or 5 years, established quite a good pick-your-own-blueberry operation. Now, I don't know his finances, but I'm assuming that that doesn't meet the 50% rule, and I know for a fact he doesn't meet the 10-acre rule. But an agricultural commission could see that he is trying hard to establish an agricultural use in the agricultural zone and perhaps show him some leeway, give him a variance to build a house there, because that's what he wants to do. They live there in the summer in a camper to keep that process going. They've already established infrastructure. They've done what they need to do. They just have a couple more hurdles to get over. And again, an agricultural commission could handle a variance that way. These ad hoc committees cannot. Another example, we have a retired firefighter from the city of Auburn who owns a good chunk of land in the ag zone, and he wants to build houses for his family. His son wants to stay in the community. They have enough acreage. He could pair off 10 acres and allow his son to build a house. Nothing wrong with that. Everybody in our committee thought, yeah, that's a reasonable request. So just looking at certain rules is not a good approach to the ag zone. The ag zone has a wide list of rules that you have to accomplish before you can build. But if we established an actual commission who could look at this stuff holistically and come up with case-by-case, well-thought-out solutions to this problem, it would be far superior to picking a little part of the ordinance and attacking it. The second thing we had here, of course, was the elimination of the 50% income rule, but replacing that policy only with a fully analyzed, researched, and targeted alternative that will serve long-term goals and priorities for the ag zone and economic sector. The key here is well thought out, well analyzed. In the past, this zone was established probably 60 years ago. And in that time, there have been at least 10 attempts to look at that 50% rule. But there's always some nuance that throws it and makes it difficult to change. You have to satisfy a lot of different things. There's a lot of different nuances. So I'm concerned with these ad hoc committees, especially such a short time frame, being able to solve the problem in a well-thought-out, analyzed way. Our committee tried to solve that problem. We took 6 months. We had a lot of ideas, but we weren't able to satisfy everybody. And just to note, we had 10 members on the committee, but really we had 15, because 5 people from the community came to almost every meeting, and they sat at the table with us. We weren't trying to exclude anybody. We were very inclusive, and we want to make it easier to live in the ag zone. We have ideas, and they shouldn't be just addressed one by one by one. We need this commission to actually do it in one big fell swoop and make proper changes. And the last thing I want to say is, I know the mayor told me not to quote him, but I'm going to quote him anyway, or I'll paraphrase him. He had a throw-out line in a recent meeting when he was talking about his ad hoc committee versus this committee. And the committee that I sat on, we strove for consensus. And the mayor said, it'll be easier because we don't need consensus, we'll just go with majority vote. And that's not what we want. We don't want it to be easy to build in the ag zone. We want it to be proper to build in the ag zone. There are 5 members of this committee here who can answer any question you have about it. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else wish to speak?
Folks. Hi. For those who don't know me, my name's Karen Bolduc. I live at 310 Soapers Mill Road, and I am a member of the previous mayor's ad hoc committee for agricultural resource protection, along with Joe, who just spoke. So, I want to build a little bit on what Joe said, just reiterate that the item number 4 that I see on today's agenda for supporting the mayor's current proposition for an ad hoc committee on ag and resource protection, that is not what our agricultural ad hoc committee had in mind. And this was, keep in mind, like Joe said, this was a study that cost taxpayers a lot of money to do by some consultants that were brought in, and our steering committee worked with those consultants to come up with 2 recommendations. They were hard fought for us to all come to consensus on, but it was unanimous consensus. And that was that a permanent authoritative ag commission or committee be established to address these issues. And secondly, the replacement of the 50% rule only with a well-thought-through informed alternative, like Joe said. Those were our 2 recommendations. neither of those have made it to the agenda, and instead this other thing that the Mayor Levesque has proposed has suddenly showed up on the agenda, which is not what we had in mind. And I'm just here to make you realize, in case you don't realize or you think that that fits the bill for what we were recommending, that is not by any means what we were recommending. In fact, I see that recommendation as a way to basically effectively end any future thinking way of looking at agriculture in the city of Auburn, and to end that discussion, because it is so temporary and looking at such a narrow piece of our ag zone and the issues that we have in our ag zone. One thing to think about, 45% of Auburn's land is in agricultural resource protection zone, yet only 2% of Androscoggin County's economic activity comes, and by extension Auburn's. We don't have specific Auburn data, but we can assume it's close. Only 2% comes from the natural resources that are based in that 45% of our ag zone. So what's the disconnect there? That's like latent potential just crying out. How do we support the agricultural, natural resource and forestry industries and get them to realize their potential? We're sitting on a landmine of gorgeous, protected agricultural lands, and what do we want to do with it? I'm not a committee-happy person. I'm not someone who thinks, hey, let's just establish a committee for this, establish a committee for that. I mean, I realize that with every committee that is established, that is some piece of the City of Auburn puzzle that is getting diluted away from you as the city council's exclusive privilege and responsibility to do the work on. So, but, even against that standard, recognizing that that is what happens when you create a committee, personally, I think, and I think many others think, that still this committee is justified because Auburn's ag lands are such a big piece of our puzzle and have the potential to be so much more. I think that the way that you guys vote on item number 4, it depends on how you see agriculture in Auburn, what piece of Auburn's puzzle you see it as. I mean, if you see other industries as being more important and ag and forestry and natural resources as just sort of this irrelevant little fringe, then by all means, please support the mayor's ad hoc committee as it's proposed. If, however, you see agriculture and Auburn's food system as holding an anchor position in the city of Auburn, as something that could grow to where Auburn, Maine, and personally this is how I see it. I love to think as a farmer that Auburn could really hold a kind of the stronghold in the state of Maine as being an agricultural leader. This is a growing movement, and we're well poised to hold that position, but it's not going to happen if we don't focus on it. And so, if you also see that Auburn's ag needs are going to change over time, that they're not a static thing where you can just say, hey, let's just put this ordinance in place, let's set a rule, and it's done. We can wash our hands of it. Well, that doesn't address the needs that might be present in 20 years. And that's what we're dealing with now. There was rules that were put in place in the 60s that now, things have changed. They don't make sense anymore. You can't make 50% of your living from farming, even if you are a full-time farmer that's aggressively trying to do that. So this committee would recognize that things change. Let's address those changing needs. Let's have a permanent body in place to deal with that. And also, thirdly, like Joe said, to deal with these, we've got many citizens who we've heard from at these city council meetings, whose lives are in a hold pattern because of the way that the ag zone is currently structured. And they would like to move forward and have someone at least be able to, a body to hear what they're doing and allow them to build. And if they have earnest agricultural intentions, I think that that should be heard and that should be considered. This body could do that. Summing up, my plea to you all, City Council, is that you don't support item number 4, supporting the Mayor's Ad Hoc Committee on Agriculture and Resource Protection as proposed, but instead, I would urge you to follow up with, as I understand it, it's Mayor Levesque and Manager Crichton that set the agenda. If I'm wrong, then whoever it is that sets the agenda, please follow up with those people and ensure that the actual recommendations that our committee actually made get on the agenda for a vote up or down. If you all decide that it's not what you want and you vote it down, I can respect that. But it hasn't even made it to the agenda yet. Instead, it just sort of blew away, and now we have this totally other thing being proposed. So I'm asking respectfully that our committee's recommendations make it to the agenda, and I would like to remind you all that you have the power to vote on that. That is up to you, and not up to any one mayor or up to anyone else. So that's really all I have to say, and I really appreciate you listening to me tonight.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Oh,
Good evening. My name is Kathy Shaw, and I also live on Soper's Mill Road, and I own Four Season Farm Market. And I am looking at this as a case of consequences and unintended consequences. 3 years ago, the City Council voted a sum of money to establish a farmer's market, which we did, and I am currently managing our small but vibrant farmer's market in New Auburn. City Council also passed the Food Sovereignty Ordinance, in effect to support our local agriculture and forestry lands and movement. I'd like you to continue in that vein, and I think by looking at this plan that a significant, huge amount of money was spent on for this study, and go forward with the well-thought-out comments made by this committee in support of the Agricultural Commission. I don't think that we should look at micromanaging another small section of these issues. I think a committee that's intended to be thoughtful about looking at the issue of ag and forestry in the city of Auburn is the right thing to do. And I don't understand why our mayor and whoever else may have the agenda to push through these two items that they're focusing on in such a fashion. There's got to be a hidden agenda, again, with consequences and unintended consequences. It's difficult to make a living farming, and when you have to keep pushing up against walls that nobody seems to be paying attention to, makes it much more discouraging. But we all have to eat, and we all have to have a place that we can go for quiet and fresh air. Our land is a haven for our animals, our wild animals, our trees that provide oxygen. There's just so many different levels. And I urge you to support the Agricultural Commission idea for the city of Auburn going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
anyone else? I hereby close the first open session. Okay, on to unfinished business. There is none. Next, with new business. First, we have an order. The first item is an order to approve the liquor license for Mike's Runway Diner located at 80 Airport Drive, Auburn, Maine. This is a public hearing. First, what would the council wish to do with this item?
Move it to accept and grant license.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I will open up the public hearing. Anybody wish to speak on this matter for the public? Please, if you do, come forward, your name and your address, please. Having none, I will close the public hearing. Now back to council. Would we like to have any discussion on this particular application of this order for liquor license?
I wish them well as a business.
Okay, with that being said, no discussion? Are you ready for a vote? With a show of, pardon me?
Ready.
All right, with show of hands, all those in favor of order 76-09172018? All opposed? That's a 7-0. Motion passes. All right, next item on the agenda. Order number 77-09172018. This is amending Order 122-21, 1218-2017, previously adopted by council regarding the discontinuance of Troy Street. I think we're going to have a brief discussion, a brief presentation once we've made a motion.
I move we accept the order 77-09172018, amending the order, previous one, of 122.
Second.
A motion by Councilor Fornia, second by Councilor Walker. At this time, I think we're going to have a presentation from Eric Cousins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Temp and City Council. We also have in the audience tonight Andrew Jackson, representing the Xanton Corporation. Okay. He's here to answer any specific questions about it, if you have some after we go through this. Just wanted to briefly sort of connect the dots from our earlier discussion back in November of last year, November and December of last year, as well as January for our final approval this year. This is the 48 Hampshire Street project. It's a workforce housing project with a mixture of workforce housing units and market rate units. It was a great addition to the city's investment along Hampshire Street, creating a much more pedestrian-friendly street than we had before. And we had brought before you, as part of that proposal back in late 17, early 18, this graphic that you see on the screen. The current location of Troy Street is the full width of this blue area from this dotted line to the yellow. As you can see on the site plan, that the current location of Troy Street will include some parking areas in the overall site plan. What they are asking for at this time is to have the council adopt the actual description of the land that will remain as a public easement to allow the public to pass through what was formerly Troy Street, but to limit that area to an area that's outside of the parking, because obviously the parked cars would prevent that passage. We had talked about this last year. They've now brought the site plan and survey data forward since then, after winning the tax credits for the project, and we have a very specific description of the portion of the Troy Street right-of-way that will remain, as well as the new right-of-way that they will dedicate to the city to essentially be able to move the public easement slightly eastward. This is actually a very good graphic that they had provided with a little bit less details on the site plan. The dotted line area is the current location is Troy Street. The dark, solid black line area will be the location of the public easement in the future. With that, be happy to answer any questions. We're asking the council tonight to adopt the order that allows for that relocation to happen, as well as allow the city manager to accept the new portion of the right-of-way that'll ensure that it's wide enough for vehicular passage.
Well, I had a couple of questions. I'll start. One of them is, what made this have to do this? What was the reason why we had to make this change? And then secondly, is this proposing it's going to be two-way traffic here and just like a street that we have right-of-way to, and I'll have to plow it and have maintenance on it and all that, or what's going to be the scoop there?
So what's making it happen, we had agreed to discontinue the street. A portion of that street will become part of the project area, but they have purchased land on the other side of what is now Troy Street, and they'd like to shift the right-of-way eastward towards the land that they've purchased. It will allow for two-way traffic. I think that's really what's driving it. The council wanted to maintain public access through there. but it will eliminate the need for the city to maintain it. So the public will still be allowed to pass through there in 2 ways, but the city will no longer have to maintain and plow that.
Any questions for Eric? Anybody? Council Young?
Maybe this is getting too much into the weeds, but will they be allowed, presently, is there any drainage, storm drains in that area?
I don't believe there are any in the section of Troy Street that's being discontinued, but all drainage will still need to function after the project is completed. I know that we have drainage on Hampshire Street. I don't believe there's an actual catch basin within the Troy Street right-of-way, but we will make sure that it still functions and the water leaves the site properly.
So if there is going to be anything, that would be part of the expense of the project, and it would tie in?
If there was an adjustment made within that area, it would be part of the project expense, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Eric, does this street that goes in front of the house that's standing there now, they're making the repairs to, does this street continue right in front of that, or do we stop short of their driveway?
So the house that they're making repairs to, I'm thinking might be this 29 Library Avenue. It's on the corner of Library.
Yeah,
Yes.
the big one, yeah.
So the street is discontinued, but the public easement remains. So the city is no longer obligated to maintain it. It will be maintained as part of this project. But the public still has a right to pass through there. That property will actually pick up a little bit of land out of this that they could expand their parking area.
Looks that way.
We've spoken with the landowner about that.
And that landowner is happy with the situation that when they plow, it will be at, I guess, at whoever runs this new complex. It'll be when they want to plow, not when he wants to get out.
We've discussed that. He agreed that there were no damages, actually saw an upside to it, that the additional land and additional parking might actually add value to his property. It was not a high-priority public street, so he's aware of the changes, and I wouldn't be surprised if it receives more plowing treatment because of their focused efforts on the parking lot than it did as a city street.
Yeah, because his whole parking lot is on that side of that street, so.
It is, and he may look to change his entrance eventually, too, if he's able to add more parking by reconfiguring it.
Fine.
Thank you for speaking with him.
Anyone else for Eric? Okay, at this point, I would ask anybody in the public if they're interested to come forward and speak on this issue. I'll open it up to the public right now. Having no one coming forward, I'll bring it back to the council for more debate. Any more discussion on this issue?
No, ready to vote.
Okay, then I'd be looking for a motion.
So moved.
Second?
It's a motion by Council Fornia, second by
You
Council
already
Walker.
made the motion.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
oh, that's
yeah.
right.
Oh, that's
All
right.
those in favor?
All set. This was the
Opposed?
discussion part.
It's unanimous.
And this will come back to you one more time for a public hearing in October, so.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Okay, next item is an order, order number 78-09172018, authorizing the city manager to sign the Minot Avenue Credit Enhancement Agreement assignment. I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion by Councilor Hayes, second by Councilor Walker. Any discussion or background information on this?
Eric, please.
So on this proposal, the city council had entered into an agreement with 477 Minot Pre-Development LLC, I believe was the name. The project was successful in obtaining tax credits at the state level. The project is getting ready to close as far as financing and begin construction. I believe they made their permit application today. And they are looking to transfer that credit enhancement agreement to, from 477 Minot Pre-Development LLC to 477 Minot LP. The principal of both corporations is the same. The president is the same person. It's being transferred from a company that works on developing projects to a company that will continue to own the project going forward. Staff recommends its approval. We won't notice from the outside that anything has changed. It's just a different corporate entity with the same principles.
And that was also a, what, 50% credit enhancement TIF for 30 years, is that correct?
I don't recall the exact percentage on that.
That's
think it
what
was.
I got from the meeting in June, that when we passed this, it was a 50% credit enhancement for 30 years.
And I think the other one was a little higher percentage, but a shorter term, and I think you're right on
Yeah,
this.
we just want to make sure everybody knows that. Any more discussion on this particular agenda item? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, raise your hands. Opposed? Passes 7-0. Next, we have a resolve number 11-09, 172018, supporting the mayor's ad hoc committee on agriculture and resource protection. Do I have a motion, or
I move we support the Mayor's Ad Hoc Committee on Agriculture and Support and Resource Protection.
do I have a second on that?
I'll second it, and my reason is I want more discussion on it, and I want, if we're going to move forward with this the way we should, to make sure the public understands that we're going to discuss this, talk about it. I want every side here to talk to us, not just one side knowing and understanding what it is. We need to do a better job getting the information out there, so everyone that wants to discuss it and let us listen to them need to come here so that that can be done.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table by Council Fornia, second by Councilor Walker. Any discussion on this resolve?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, Councilor Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I would like to offer an amendment to the agenda item. I would like to offer an amendment. This amendment replaces the City Council resolve in support of the Mayor's Ad Hoc Committee on Agricultural Natural Resources Protection. This amendment is now in order of the Auburn City Council. Ordered that the Auburn City Council hereby establishes the Agriculture Natural Resource Protection Committee. The purpose defined: 1, to work with and further the recommendations set forth by the Agricultural Resource Protection Zone study of 2018 and the previous Mayor's Ad Hoc Committee. 2, work on other concerns and issues that were brought up and were not fully addressed. 3, address the income requirements, lot size, setbacks, minimum land usage requirements, requirements to build a home, and etc. in Auburn's current agricultural resource protected zone. 4th, to bring forth language, mission statements, and description to the Auburn City Council for the City Council to establish in a city ordinance the Agricultural and Natural Resource Protection Board per the recommendations of the last Mayor's Ad Hoc Committee on Agricultural Natural Resource Protection and part of their final report from their Agricultural Resource Protection Zone study of 2018. As part of this council order, the city manager is directed to delegate appropriate staff time and resources to the formation of the City Council's Agricultural and Natural Resource Protection Committee, as well as the ongoing support of the committee once it has been formed, comparable to staff time and resources with the, I didn't put that in here, with the exception of the study cost, delegated to the past ad hoc committee. The city manager is asked to allow city staff to provide support as needed in order to accurately and efficiently bring forth proposed changes to ordinances to the city council for deliberation and possible action, and be provided documents and reports related to the Ag Zone study for the city, as well as information and reports gained from the recent Ag Zone Study Committee, and other informational materials pertaining to the works may be asked for. The committee membership. On the new Agricultural and Natural Resource Protection Committee, the City Council will appoint a City Councilor as a chair and a City Councilor for vice chair. The mayor can serve if he is at his pleasure. The other members will be made up of one planning board member nominated by the chair of the planning board, one conversation committee member nominated by the chair of the conservation committee, 2 residents working in the agricultural industry, 1 resident landowner in current ag zone, 1 resident at large, 2 property owners who are either a wannabe or soon-to-be retiring farmer living in the ag zone. I've increased the membership so that if so chose, the chair of the committee and the vice chair could run 2 groups simultaneously in order to hold meetings based on whichever time schedule works for whichever groups, because if farmers serve on the board, they may not be able to work late in the evenings, and some people that can attend evening meetings could probably work on the day. I know this is not the greatest piece of work, but this is my first attempt, and I had to throw something out there. I care deeply what happens to the ag zone. I attended all the meetings, and I know these people worked hard. I want to preserve what we have, as well as try to find ways to encourage those that are trying to get into the agricultural industry. I know that the mayor had the best intentions. I know he
Mr. Mayor, Pro Tem, can I ask the
Councilor
counselor,
Young.
is this still part of your motion, or are you speaking in favor of the motion?
I am explaining the motion and the thing.
I'm asking for a ruling from the chair that you might be out of order if you
Well,
don't
I
have a
mean,
second.
once you've made your amendment, if you finished making your
Yes.
amendment, my concern is that we're not making an amendment, we're replacing, or we're coming up with an alternative to
Right.
the resolve, and in which case, we'd have to vote this resolve down, and then maybe, I don't believe in voting on the same night we see a piece of paper.
Oh,
I
no,
would not
I
want to
had
vote on
planned-
a replacement in the same night, but it's just offering an alternative to what we have here, so
So
I don't think it's really an amendment to this
I
resolve.
plan
It's-
to,
it's-
it can be done, an amendment can replace the document.
If we
It's done.
choose to vote for that particular document, but I would not want to vote for that document tonight after just seeing it for not
Right.
even a second.
Yes, you can give that to them. I mean, I recognize the fact that it needs to be tabled, but I wanted to
I
throw
was
this
going to
out
just
there
about
for
say that we need to
consideration.
table it at this point.
I mean, I
The point
wanted
of
to
order,
get it on the record.
can a not motion be made to
and
table after we vote, put a motion forward, or we have to defeat the motion?
Yes,
Yes, you can make a motion to postpone the item to a future meeting.
right.
Well, I guess if that ends this
Right, ends
discussion.
discussion, right.
Yes. Because none of us have had an opportunity to see this.
Well, I mean, what I'm seeing here is a replacement, it's almost a council committee rather than an ad hoc committee. And one of the things that we have to understand is that the mayor has the right under our charter to come up with a committee, and if he wants to have one, he can have
Right,
one.
he can.
This resolve is supporting the idea, but he can still have a committee. Now, if this council decides they want to have a committee, or they want to bring forth the items that we heard today in open session, one by one, this council can do that. But as far as the mayor's, this resolve here, it's only simply a support. It's not going to kill it or make it go away. It's just,
Well, I'm willing to take back my comment on tabling it. It's just that I think we're taking a couple steps at a time, and we need to be clear on what we're doing. I think one of the things that might help as far as purpose of discussion is that I made the motion for purposes of discussion, and discussion started with Council Walker, and then and he seconded it, and then he started with some discussion, and then further discussion as well. So I think we all have in mind that we want to preserve, the ag zone as much as we can and do the right thing. So that's the next step. That's not tonight. We just need to get the vehicle moving and with input from everyone. So I'll back.
Mr. Mayor.
Back.
So we're not tabled yet.
Not tabled yet.
Nobody's
Okay.
made a motion. so-
Well,
Didn't we move for discussion?
Yeah, we're in discussion phase right now,
Okay,
Councilor Young.
could I speak?
Yes.
I'm not against this process, and I'm not against it because I'm fearing that we might not get to the recommendations, because I think we'll get there. But I heard in the open session that some of our people here that did speak, they were afraid that we were going not to act on those recommendations, and I think we will. We'll either vote it up or we'll vote it down, but we'll take some action. And I see this as the first step. So I don't see any reason not to proceed and okay the mayor's ad hoc committee, because he doesn't need our blessing anyway. He could do it on his own. But to have us support it and have a part to play in it for the recommendation and also bring these other people in. This is not your agricultural board that is proposed, but we may get there eventually.
And ad hoc means just that. Ad hoc means a short-term committee. It doesn't mean a forever committee. That would be something further down the road if that was the decision of the group.
But the ad hoc committee that he's appointing has a very narrow scope of only 2 issues. So if that committee only does those 2 and nothing else, that's worse than doing nothing at all, because it's a fine art thing. You've got to do a series in order to be beneficial to those that own property in the ag zone and are currently farming. Because if you pull this Band-Aid that's there now off, you can potentially destroy the ag zone as we know it today.
I think that is your opinion and not the opinion of the rest of everybody sitting here.
Right.
Until we go further ahead, we won't know where we're going to end up, but we can sit here and argue all night. So please, as mayor, move us forward.
Well, a few comments. One, I don't think we've done justice to the committee that's come before us with recommendations. I think too often in the past, we've done exactly what we're doing again, is that we discourage people from serving on committees when they bring forth something, and then we, don't, accept those recommendations and move on them. At least we should table this tonight. We should put on the agenda for next time around, put the recommendation to a vote. And if we vote it down now, that's fine, but there's be reasons. If we want to move on to the ad hoc committee, which a mayor can do, but I guess even there, I'd rather see it be and I think as Belinda suggesting, make it a council committee. I do think it's too narrowly defined in this resolve. It is specifically looking at the 10-acre and, and the 50%, and that's narrow. So I think that, what Belinda has presented, I think, is worthy. the mayor can do it, but I think he's certainly showed his cards is that exactly what he wants. And that's not necessarily what's best. So I think that, you know, tabling tonight is appropriate. I think we have something new to look at before us, but I think we owe it to the former committee to at least put it to a vote with appropriate discussion from the council as well as from the public.
I totally respect the work of the former committee. That was a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money, and this was just a vehicle to get us going, and if it's tabling, I will bring it up again as a motion, and so that we can give it time for us to take a look at this and you know, and be informed before.
So
we
you're
make
making a motion to table?
I am making a motion
We have a
to
second.
table again.
Second?
Now that we've got the motion, there's no more discussion. At this point, we have to go for a vote.
Point of
All
order, for a date certain.
Oh, yes, certainly. Forever or for a date certain?
Excuse me?
Oh, do we have a date certain, or are we tabling it?
Oh, I think we're tabling it until the next meeting. I mean, this is, I don't want to, it's not my intention to drag this out. This has been dragged out long enough, and I think a lot of people are waiting for answers here, and I would say that if we can put that on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay, and you'd second that motion as well?
Yes, I do. Second.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, at this point, no more discussion. All those in favor of tabling the motion, raise your hand. Those opposed? We said a 4-3, that means it's tabled?
Yes, yes.
No. All right, so with a 4-3 vote, it is tabled. But that also brings us on to the next item which relates to that, and that is order number 79-09172018, appointing a city council to serve on the mayor's ad hoc committee.
With the
To table.
mayor, I move we table that also.
Right.
Okay, we have a second, move to table by Councilor Gary, second by
Till
Councilor
the
Young.
next meeting.
At this point, there can be no discussion on a tabled item. All those in favor of tabling? Those opposed? All right, that's 6-1 with Councilor Walker and okay, then that takes care of that.
Is there no public discussion allowed on these items?
He has been letting people
And
discuss.
we don't even discuss it.
Right. Well, we tabled it, but I suppose, yeah.
We tabled it.
Tabled it. What would the answer be?
If we table, I don't believe there's any discussion at all after we table.
I don't believe you need to open it up for public discussion if you're tabling it. However, as the presiding officer of the meeting, if you want to hear comments.
Well, I would, if somebody really wants to make a comment, I would definitely open it up then for that purpose. Again, it is a tabled item, so we can't discuss it any further as a council, though.
Right.
Dan Herrick, 470 Hatch Road. Really no sense me even talking now, you've already tabled it. Usually there's public discussion before there's a vote on each agenda item, but that's fine. I sat on the first ad hoc committee as a member. I agree with parts and pieces from every one of you tonight, but only parts and pieces. There's an agenda here that really, truly makes no sense to the hardworking farmer in the agricultural zone. This ad hoc committee that was put together by the past mayor, and this new mayor can do whatever he wants to try to put another one together. The only one that can stop that's you people. Do I feel that we need another meeting, ad hoc, brand-new ad hoc committee? Absolutely not. When I sat on this committee, I knew when our chairs brought this to you people, and I told them right point blank that it wasn't gonna work. And I'm not patting myself on the back, but it didn't work, and that's fine. But if you people weren't happy, you should have came back to us and said, hey, look, wait a minute here. Why don't we give you people another 60, 90 days, go back to your job, and bring us back something we can work with? That would have been more manly than to have somebody come up with a new group of people that haven't worked with a consultant that we spent $40,000 on, $10,000 of St. Mary's Nutrition Center, $50,000 total, and you people got nothing for that except what was handed to you on a piece of paper by two people that would chair this committee. You got nothing. Absolutely nothing in my book. And I agree with what you're saying. You have nothing to work with, and I think you all have the same passion that we have, but you had nothing to grab hold of and say, wow, let's work on the 50% rule, let's work on the 10-acre rule, let's work on this, let's work on that. That's fine. This mayor can put together anything he wants. I don't have a problem with that. My mic got shut off, that's fine. He can do whatever he wants. He can change the 50% rule, he can change the 10-acre rule. You people can vote on it. I can go purchase a 25-acre parcel of land. I can come into the City of Auburn Planning and Permitting Department the next morning and say, I own this land, I got 25 acres, I'm gonna build a house. They're gonna look at me and say, no, you can't. You can't build a house on it. The 10-acre rule can be gone, the 50% rule can be gone, I still can't build. That's the issue. I don't think that people realize the time zone of 60 days or 3 months, whatever it was, I don't know, I don't care. You can't get it done. It took the people that put this together years to get this confined into a position that's going to take months and months and months to turn around for today's world. You're not going to do it in that time frame. You people, some of you may, some of you may not, be sitting here when this all comes to a vote. There's an agenda here. I don't know if you people know this or not. We got the first draft from the consultants. That first draft was sanitized. I picked up on it. I asked the consultants right face to face, is this your original draft? They said, absolutely not. But the people on that committee got it. I got a second draft. I don't know if they did or not. So you got to confront this city. You got to work with this city, okay? Because they're going to be the ruler no matter what we all say when it comes down to if I can build, if I can grow my farm, if I can do this, if I can do that. No, it's all different. If I would, tabling it was exactly my thoughts tonight. Thank you. I really appreciate that. That's what should have been done. And the next agenda should have been done the same way. But you people got to get together and you got to come forward and say, look, this is what we're expecting. The past ad hoc committee worked or talked on what needed to be done. And vision came up more than once. A lot of ideas came out of that. A lot of good ideas. And visions only. And I kept saying, the visions aren't going to work unless we fix it. And we got to fix it. We need to grow. Times are changing. Agriculture's changing. Back when the old horse and drawn plows, no. We got satellite tractors now pulling our plows. That's how much it's changed. So why can't we change in the ag world? Why aren't we changing our land? Why aren't we changing the options to make it more viable for everybody? The youngsters coming up today, where are they going to be? You got to move this forward. And to do that, the right thing would have been is for one of you people to make a motion, or our mayor, whatever, say, look, we're going to give you guys another 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. Bring us back something we can work with, and then we'll move on to the next one. Never happened. That's what's sad. Instead, you're going to grab the bull by the horns, put in another committee. They have not a clue what the past committee said except what was in paper. That don't mean nothing. We need something to bring to you people to start working on. And the only way to do that is tell that group of people to go back to the drawing board and bring you back something that you people can start with.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Counselor Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Hypothetically, we could potentially do what he recommended. We could, somebody on the prevailing side could back up those two motions for that agenda item, amend that tonight, and recall them to come back to work and put in, another month? 1 month? Would that give you time? Former Councilor Herrick, would a month give you time for your committee to meet?
I thought we weren't supposed to discuss anymore.
We weren't supposed to discuss.
Problem is right now, is I stopped work early tonight. I'm a farmer, and I know Bell probably shut his potato digger down early. You can't do that right now. Let's put it like the first of the year. What's our hurry? Is there an agenda out there we don't know about? Bring us back in 1st of January. Let us work out our schedule. 1st of January, we're gonna bring you something.
I mean, that's something we can make sure that we work out a workshop or something to decide what we want them to work on, or,
Definitely.
I mean,
We wouldn't do that tonight, so.
right. No, we can't.
Personally, the workshopping, it should be like by itself, because this is a big item. And then, I'm in favor of I was always in favor of getting the group back together for a few months, give us some ideas as to where we needed to go, but somehow that all got lost in the shuffle. But, the similar people who have been on the committee know what they've talked about. They have a lot more information than we do. And it's all work that's been put into it that we would not want to let go to waste. So I think if we had a workshop on that and call that as soon as possible, with the idea of coming up with a recommendation. And if that be to reestablish the position, the group, anyone from that group who would want to, then that probably would be it.
Okay? So we want to have a workshop item to decide what we're going to go, whether we're going to call the previous committee back into play. I certainly like the idea, though, of the three major points that were made, of the two major points,
Right.
though no reason why we can't workshop those items
Right.
at the same time and
and
talk
give-
about what they are and see if we can move ahead without having a committee need to go and
Right.
revisit all those items again, because there's more to it than just those two, but
There is.
those are the two recommendations that were made. And
But opening it up to people too, so that they know ahead of time, we are going to discuss this, giving them, pre-announcement so that they can come with ideas and opinions.
I agree. I think we need further discussion, maybe even before we construct or put the agenda together for the next meeting.
Definitely.
If we get done with some time, I mean, we have before us ones that were involved, and I guess I'm kind of interested to see, I think earlier we had some committee members earlier that felt they were done. Others, I think were interested in continuing on, and those probably more leaning towards the commission. If we have a little time tonight, if the public would like to stay, if we could have maybe a somewhat of a workshop tonight to kind of decide on what we want on the agenda for our next meeting.
I think
Whether
it's
it's
a great idea.
continue the workshop or actually, have something that we would vote on.
Right, and while you're here, I mean, this is a great idea, because we don't want to waste people's time. They're already here, let's hear from them.
Okay. Ready to move on to the next item, folks? Okay, we will. All right.
Speed it up.
Okay, the next item on the agenda, item number 6. This is Resolve number 12-09172018, supporting the creation of a strategic plan and to allow the city manager to move forward with a strategic planning process. It's going to be a resolve, and I'll read it. It says, whereas the city of Auburn has a comprehensive plan that is well underway, whereas the City of Auburn remains committed to the progress and completion of the comprehensive plan, whereas the City of Auburn is committed to a safe, sustainable, and livable neighborhoods, whereas we are a unique, small city that offers a quality education and bold economic, recreation, and housing opportunities, whereas the comprehensive plan states that it is the primary responsibility of the city manager to implement the plan, whereas the strategic plan is a management tool for the implementation of the plan and other challenges facing the city, whereas the city council will vote on each committee, the charge for each committee, and receive a report back from each committee, then therefore be it resolved that the city council supports the creation of a strategic plan. Be it further resolved that the strategic plan process shall utilize 3 committees with growth, quality of life, and investment. And be it further resolved that the city manager shall move forward with the strategic planning process. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Council Fournier,
Second for discussion
Yes.
purposes.
second by Council Hayes. Okay, any discussion? Go ahead, Council Hayes.
And I seconded it, but I had some reservations, and there are a few. One, earlier, it was stated that the committees would be made up from individuals from some of our standing committees. I don't see mention of that in here. I see vague language suggesting the council will vote on each committee, but that's not on council participants. And I guess we haven't seen how are those names being compiled. I think the bigger issue is this is a resolve, but these are committees. We should make them our committees. So I think that one way or another, we need to see who's going to participate, and we need to vote on that. So I guess that's the biggest question, is whether this should be the establishment of the 3 committees. I like the approach, and I think we need to do it. And I think it does feed into updating our comprehensive plan. But right now, I'm a little concerned that we don't have the real guidelines as to how we're selecting those to participate.
I agree, and I made the motion for purposes of discussion as well. I probably should have specified that, but there needs to be a little more defined language before, I'm ready to go with it. Certainly, we need a strategic plan. A lot has come to this point that's been refined and it's getting to look better and better, but you're right, we do need more language that alludes to us as counselors and our role and what we do with that.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Council Young.
I see these committees, these 3 committees, in the same light that we used to have. We had those other committees a while back under another city manager, except these are going to be used for the source of work comes from the plan that we have. And so it's just an interim process or a subcommittee. I'm not threatened in any way by taking any authority from us, because we'll have representation on that committee. It will be being by people from our bureaucracy, or people from our other types of things, of these other committees that are from the volunteers that we have working for the city and such, the expertise. And out of that talking, that we'll come up with something to come back to the entire council. So it'll be the entire council will either vote it up or down, or what kind of action we come to go forward. So I don't see any reason why we should study about who's going to be on these committees. I mean, there should be a process. And I guess we could put that in as a step if you want to have that much, the need for that control. But we got to start somewhere.
Go ahead, Council Hayes.
And I guess, and I agree, the true appointment procedure does take time. But I guess at the minimum, we should have a list of those that might like to be on one of these, on these committees. And maybe through executive session, the whole council getting together and looking at that list and the pros and, there may be some that we'd like to add, some we may have some concerns with. We might have some suggestions that we'd like to see this individual be not on one, but two, maybe even three. So I think that, again, I think before us, it's a little too vague. I'd like to.
Well, there's no hurry on this, but there is should have an understanding on how long it's going to take.
Well, I just want to make the point that this is a resolve for going down a road that there is a process in place for a council committee. What we have to do, the appointment process is in place. A committee that we voted to have to start, get going to direct staff to create a committee for council. There's specific rules for that. Do we want to see the rules before we vote for a resolve? Is that what we're saying? Or do we know that there's rules in place so that if this council decides, okay, we want a committee on the first item of the list, then it's going to go through the process that's allowed by the charter. I don't think that we're expecting that there's going to be a committee that'll just be started up tomorrow with a chosen list of people by the city manager. I don't think that's what the plan is. The plan is to have a committee that this council votes for and then follows charter procedure and procedure for committees, a council committee, including the
Mr. Mayor.
appointment process.
And I'm willing to vote for that.
But this resolve, it can't possibly have 15 pages to it explaining the process, but we're going to do it by process, otherwise there won't be a committee. Unless it says ad hoc. Councilor Walker.
Okay, just my 2 cents in it. If I'm going to vote in favor of this, put my name on it, I definitely want to be responsible, along with the city manager, to implement any plan that goes forward. And this kind of puts it that when it's his time, responsibility, it's him that will implement whatever plan that he feels that needs to go forward. So I wanted to say council and the city manager implementing whatever plan we go forward with.
Did you want to make a motion to the resolve? Or do you think the resolve
Well, if
says that?
we need a motion for that, I'll make the motion that
to be.
we are side by side with the manager. We don't run his team, but I would like to know before he gives them the order to go, that we agree to that. So I look at it as we need to be the primary responsibility people to say, okay, city manager, this is the plan you run with.
Is
Well,
that the outcome the committee has after they have their deliberations? I can't get my words around. It's hung around my words.
Maybe, Mr. Manager, you could.
I work for you, so the language on the primary responsibility of the city manager to implement the plan comes from the 2010 comprehensive plan. I didn't make that up. That's in the comprehensive plan. So that the comprehensive plan can be implemented with city staff at the direction of the city council. As far as the makeup of the committees go, and we've talked about this before, the committees will come from existing committees. We'll come to you with the names of the members of the committees. And there may be some people that are not on existing committees, and you'll be able to approve whoever serves on those committees. I am not and I'm sure the assistant city manager feels the same way. I'm not about to try and move ahead with a strategic planning process without the support of the council. This is significant and important initiative for the council. One of the things that I've learned over the last year and a half is there are a number of issues in the city that do need to be addressed, and there are a lot of issues that are being talked about, and we need to focus on those issues. And I need to have the city council to help focus on those issues and to provide direction to me and the city staff on which issues you would like us to work on and how you prioritize those issues is very important to me and to the folks in the city manager's office and the people that I work with on a regular basis.
I have a question. Is everybody comfortable with, I mean, I know I am, with the 3 areas of growth, quality of life, and investment? Does that kind of encapsulate everything that we're thinking of as far as a strategic plan is concerned? I mean,
Well,
would we need to change that? If we don't, I mean, I was going to suggest a language change in the resolve to see if that meets with people's, councilors' acceptance. One would be the very bottom, to be it further resolved that under the direction and approval of city council, city manager shall move forward with the strategic planning process. Just to add that at the beginning. That's just to get
I think
us-
that would address some people's issues. Counselor Young?
Yes.
Point of order, you already have a motion for an amendment by Counselor Walker. So before we move on to another,
Sorry, jumping the gun.
Yeah, so, Councilor Walker, did you get a second on your amendment?
no.
I don't think you did, so,
You didn't ask for one.
okay. So, are you retracting your,
Or restating.
I don't have a problem if we're going to take the motion up, so I'll retract mine. Go ahead.
he's going to not, all right, then that's been removed. Now, Councilor Fornier, you wish to make an amendment to,
Yes, I wish to make an amendment that at the very bottom, that we add this phrase, and be it further resolved, that under the direction and approval of the city councilors, that the city manager shall move forward with the strategic planning process.
do I have a second on the motion to amend? Second by Councilor Walker. Now, we're just going to have a discussion on the amendment? No discussion or vote on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment? All opposed? That's a 7-0, so it wins. Now back to the original motion. Any more discussion on it?
Yes, because I don't think, again, in this, what's before us, it still doesn't address the makeup of the committees.
Okay, but.
So, again, if it's, somehow, if it's going to be if it's council committees, we got to go through the process. If we're going to utilize existing committees and members of standing committees, it should be stated. If there are going to be some people, staff-wise, no problem. But if there are going to be people brought in from the outside that are not on committees now, but just people that suddenly appear, I disagree with that. I think that we need to be involved in a review of those people.
Well, I think that goes back to what this is asking, that each council will vote for each committee as it comes up. So at the time that we're going to form a committee, we will vote on the nuances of that committee, on the process of which it's how it is formed and who's appointed to it. This
Perhaps-
resolve does not automatically open up 3 committees. What it does is it says we will vote for each committee and its charge when it comes
And-
forward.
And I guess
And
its membership.
Would you, I
Which
think you might want to add.
Council committees
a
have
little
an
more phrasing.
appointment process that they go through.
Well, I don't hear that being suggested.
Well, I think we suggest it when we're voting for a committee.
I was going
right?
to
Well, no,
suggest,
that's not clear. I don't read that into what's before us.
I understand what you're saying. It makes perfect sense. I think that at this time, we could also, once we get done with this cycle, go into another change in the language. So you may recommend additional wording that makes it very clear.
Well, I think I would offer the amendment then, whereas the council will vote on each committee and its membership.
There we go. Are you making a
There you
motion
go.
to add that?
Yes.
I second that.
Second that motion of the amendment to read the, that was item,
Where,
that's whereas the city council
Fourth one
will
up.
vote for each committee, the charge for such committee, and its
makeup.
membership, and receive a report back from the committee, from each committee. So I have a motion on the table and a second. All that in favor of the of the amendment? Opposed? Okay, that passes 7-0. We're now back to the original motion with 2 amendments.
Point of order,
Yes.
public comment?
Yeah, we're going to get, I think we'll just, yeah.
Yeah, the public comment would come in
Okay.
here.
Council's all set, then I will open it up for public comment.
Thanks for the reminder, Sue.
I just didn't know where to fit that in, whether we have a discussion, then we wait so they can hear all what we have to say first, and then, but seeing none public comment, back to the council. Any more discussion? Then I'd say we put it to a vote. All those in favor of the resolve, raise your hand. All those opposed? I guess that passes unanimously. Any abstentions? No, 7-0, it passes. There, thank you.
Thank you. That was a little tricky.
All right, I think that carries us on to reports. We don't have a mayor's report tonight unless he Skyped it in. I don't think he did. So I guess we'll start with council reports, and to my right with Councilor Gary.
Well, our age-friendly group is going to be meeting tomorrow night at 5:30 at the Senior Center next our Auburn Senior Community Center next to the Hasty Army Building in Pettingill Park. It's open to all seniors and anyone interested in attending our meeting. And then at the end of the month, the 29th, we're having a hot dog social. And I guess Councilor Walker is going to be cooking hot dogs. So please come on down, it's free, and it's going to start about noon time. And I'm going to see if I can scare up some dessert to go with his hot dogs. And I'm sure when it gets down to his corner, he'll explain even more.
That's it? Okay, Councilor Lasagna.
This afternoon, the Citizens Advisory Committee met to discuss the presentation of the draft comprehensive annual performance and evaluation report for the CDBG for the program year 2017, and we reviewed that. And we also discussed some ideas moving forward for 2018, including meeting a little more regularly before meeting to make decisions on funding decisions. Oh, and a number of us went to see the LA Thunder on Friday night. There were I think about 750 people there. It was around 700. Seemed like a pretty full house. It was a really great product. They didn't win, but they played a good game on Friday, and I guess they played a better one on Saturday.
Councilor Hayes.
So Mike's Diner had their ribbon cutting at the airport, and we approved a liquor license for them tonight. I just hope the pilots don't partake prior to flying. I too enjoyed the outing at the arena. I just wish Bonnie, my wife, had allowed me to go home and change out of my shorts and a short-sleeve shirt.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's it?
That's
Okay.
it.
I just have a couple of items. Tomorrow at 4 o'clock, the sewer trustees meeting will be held at the Auburn Water District at 4 o'clock. And then on Wednesday will be the water meeting as well, the water trustees meetings. We did have a meeting of the audit committee and reviewed some findings of the audit committee, which this council will be seeing pretty soon. That was Friday. But besides that, everything else has been quiet.
When's your next county budget meeting?
Oh, sure. I sent the email out, but I
If
guess
I'm
I should
available, I'd like
reiterate.
to attend for old time's sake.
Yes. We started also the Androscoggin County Budget Committee met for their first meeting last Wednesday. And we've got
That's why I didn't go.
good place to start with a 5.49% increase in the tax levy coming right out the gate. So we've got a really challenge ahead of us there, and we look forward to the next meeting is going to be the 26th of September, and then there'll be, I think it's 3 successive Wednesdays to actually study the budget.
What time?
6 o'clock at the county building in the commissioner's room.
Councilor Titus, is there budget online?
No, but I emailed a copy, I thought, to all of you folks. Maybe I can re-email it again, but I did get a
Thank you.
digital copy or a scanned copy. And so I'll send it again, just to make sure you have it. But yeah, everybody should have a copy of it, and it's kind of astounding that the commissioner's budget and the department head's budget was only $500 apart. And I don't know if I've ever seen that small of a difference in all the budgets that I've been studying. So it should be just interesting to see how this goes. But thank you.
Thanks for representing us on that committee. You do an outstanding job. Gatekeeper.
That's right.
That's your position. All of my meetings are taking place this week. So Board of Trustees is tomorrow at 7:30, and the regular school committee is Wednesday at 7 at night. And the parade committee, my parade committee will be on the 27th at 3 o'clock in room 204. And there's a library annual meeting in the evening. Anyone can attend that. I think it's like around 5 or 6. I didn't quite put down the time. But, so I don't have anything to report right now. That's it.
That was a quick one.
That's a quick one, yeah. I thought I'd give you all the gift of time.
Great, great, thank you. I only have a few things as well. We've got our United New Auburn Association meeting that will be at Rolly's Diner on the 25th, which is Tuesday evening at 6 o'clock. And we have the LA Museum coming over to speak with us and maybe do a little bit of filming or listening to some of our older people that may have some great stories to tell. So come on down and be with us at Rolly's Diner at 6 o'clock on the 25th. On the 27th, we will still have the Neighborhood Watch meeting at 6:30 at the 6th Street Congregational Church. That's the 27th, Thursday evening. We will be talking about, at that Neighborhood Watch, the Neighborhood Watch meeting that our lieutenants of the Neighborhood Watch groups will be putting together a meeting on the 29th at the Hasty Community Center from 8 a.m. until 12 o'clock. At that point, that is when the age-friendly committee, community committee will kick in with the hot dogs and some Kool-Aid and some chips, and maybe, like Councilor Gary said, maybe she'll bring some desserts. Now, the hot dogs and chips and drinks and desserts will be free. We will not be selling them, so we hope to have a couple, 300 of them. Come on down. Well, we're going to have a great time. We'll have steamed hot dogs and grilled hot dogs. We also will have red and brown. I will leave it like that. If it's all beef, I'm not sure. I think there's beef and pork in one. In the red one, I'm not sure what they put into that skin, but it's going to be pretty red, I can tell you that. So come on down, 12 to 2. We cook for you. 8 to 12 o'clock, the Neighborhood Watch people will all be there to show you how to learn about the crimes and how to defend yourself, I think, and look at maybe some of their equipment they have. So come on down and enjoy yourself. And tomorrow night, the age-friendly meeting at 5:30 at the Senior Community Center. Come on down, it is for all of us, and we'll talk about anything you'd like to bring to the table. Thank you.
This last Thursday, I attended my sister-in-law's funeral, Alice Keene. For a number of years, she was the hot lunch lady at middle school, I think. The open house at Pioneer Plastics went fine. I had a tour myself, and I learned a few things about the company I've worked for 21 years that I didn't know. And so you can always learn something new. It was a great band, great food, and it was nice to see a lot of people there. That's all I have to report.
Thank you. Mr. Manager,
Thank
you
you,
have the
sir.
report.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, thank you. I want to start with a question for you. I have been talking to people about the fact that the Public Works Department name was changed a few years ago to Public Services. I'm not exactly sure how long ago that was. I noted that the ordinance still states Public Works. I have talked with a number of the employees. I've talked with each of you at different times. If there are no objections, I'd like to change the name back to Public Works.
No objection from me.
And I love it, I love it.
Okay, all right.
That takes care of all the T-shirts with Public Works on the back of it. You
Yes,
can wear them after all.
that's right, you can.
Have to buy new ones.
I also want to mention that the Auburn Connections for September is out. If you haven't had a chance to look at that, Liz Allen does a great job with that, with the support of the departments and department directors. Also, a reminder of the New Year's celebration coming up. We've already started to promote that. If you'd like more information, go to 150.com. And there is a stakeholders meeting for the Lewiston Auburn Transit Committee, which is coming up this Thursday morning at 10 a.m. at AvCog. I spoke about that earlier when we were doing the workshop on the comp plan regarding the strategic planning process. There are businesses that have been invited to this working group meeting, as well as different entities that have an interest in the transit system. I also want to mention that, and do a shout out to the Dempsey Challenge, which is going to be September 29th and 30th. And lastly, I just want to comment on the hockey game. It was great to be there. Happy to see the councilors were able to take the time to attend and be part of that. It was a nice event. I think we learned a lot that first game in terms of what we need to do, and it's a learning process. We had a meeting today, a few of us, to talk about it. And I also want to mention there will be a report to the council in November on the arena and where we're at and what we're doing, and thank you very much.
Thank you. That brings us to our last open session of the evening. We'll now open this up of the last of the night. Members of the public who are invited to speak to the council about any issue directly related to city business but is not on this agenda. Just please ask you to state your name and your address. Having no takers, then I guess I will close the session, the last open session. All right, that brings us to just one more item yet to do, because we don't have an executive session. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Workshop.
Before we adjourn, I'd like to make a couple statements here that we got notified from a resident that lives in New Auburn area next to Walton School that has complained to us several times And he also has a neighbor that lives just down the road from him that has done exactly the same thing as this gentleman has done. He sent us an email stating that he is really dissatisfied with the way the school department and the city of Auburn maintains their grounds. The school department at Walton, whoever is responsible for it, doesn't matter if it's us, doesn't matter if it's the school department, needs to take more pride in what they do. If you go to Walton School, you'll be ashamed of yourself if you live in the city of Auburn to walk around them grounds at that place. The neighbors that live there, own properties, are ashamed to go home to their own home and go by Walton School. And it's not just because of construction, it's the maintenance that is done around the playground areas, the basketball court, the fences, the roadway, everything else that you can think of. I have gone to our city manager and asked him to please pass on the responsibility to whoever it is to maintain and take care of these grounds. There are other grounds throughout the city that look just as bad as that looks up there, but this is the one that the complaint, lack of pride, has been dumped into our lap once again. And I would like to put a call out to the school department to maintain their school facilities so that they look like something when you are asking people to come to your property and to be part of our city, and stop pushing the pride away from the city of Auburn. You want a new school? You have to learn to take care of things. And if you people, as a school department, do a terrible job. So that is from me and the neighbors that live around the Walton School.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Walker. You reminded me that you were, does council have interest in continuing a workshop for a few minutes on what we
Sure.
talked about with our ag hoc, the rather
Can we
future of the,
have an ending time, perhaps? Or, no?
no, I don't think so, but maybe we can try to limit it to a half an hour. Or,
Like the discussions per person, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to get some information, if you guys want to move forward with,
They're here if they would like to
oh,
speak.
do we need to adjourn first? Okay.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Councilor Fournier, and seconded by Councilor Walker. All those in favor? We are adjourned. But now we will open this workshop to just discuss again what we learned tonight and see how we'd like to move forward with the ag study. Anybody wish to start?
I mentioned, oh, I'm sorry.
No, no, go.
Should we wait, because I think there's Mr. Gray. Are there enough people here to have a workshop?
I'd like to hear from some maybe in the audience
There's
as
at least
to the
four.
idea of the continuance of the previous committee, and I think it was kind of divided, maybe amongst that membership.
I'm David Haynes. I was vice chair of the committee that produced a very large document for, I hope you've all had a chance to read it carefully. I simply want to point out that what we were asking for was the council to take action on two items, most important of which was the establishment of an agricultural resource commission, or I don't remember the exact words we used. I'd like to see that put on an agenda for discussion. I think that would cut through a lot of the confusion here. Rather than, I'm not sure how I feel about bringing the committee back together again. We've done a lot of work. We've learned a lot. And I'd like the council as well to appreciate not just the work that went into it, but also what we've said. And it's clear from the report we want to have a commission established. Now, you may each have your own opinions on that, but I think the only way to get some clarity is to put on the agenda, put on the agenda for some council meeting that the council agrees to the establishment of an agricultural commission as described by the report from the ad hoc committee. There are other items as well, but I think that one would be a good starting point. If you don't agree to that establishment, then fine, but we've got to get some clarity, because we've put a lot of effort into making that recommendation, and we would like to have a yes or no answer on it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, can we comment?
Councilor Zine?
I agree with Mr. Haynes. I think one of the things is that if you read the whole report, they came up with some pretty specific recommendations. And I think to start to address the recommendations is to establish a commission. And I think that Ms. Bolduc made a very strong point in terms of having a standing commission that is able to address the nuances of being a farmer, the nuances of being a resident here. Each different person may have a different need when they come before the commission. We may not be able to just make these hard and fast rules as an ad hoc committee around the 10%, the 10-acre rule or the 50% rule, that there needs to be a standing group that knows what they're doing to be able to address the individual needs. And I think the first thing to do is to establish the commission. It's my opinion. So I would like to see it on the agenda.
Councilor Fournier?
I too would like to see it on the agenda. As I said at the very end, at the closing of this group, I felt that they needed to continue. And there were a number of them, a few who didn't want to continue, but most of them, I believe, did. So I think that it behooves us to be able to finish and complete this work. Agree with Councilor Lasagna.
I think I'll speak up and just say that I think we owe it, again, to that committee to at least bring those items up, and that's a good place to start. I don't know a lot about those commissions and what they do and how they work, and we'd have to get more in depth about that, get the information, and move on it. But that's something that we definitely should be doing.
Mr. Sylvester.
Yeah, any more public comment? Please come forward.
I got a few words to say. I don't know if all those people want to be on that same committee, ad hoc thing or not. I put my name in for the new one because I thought, well, going to be better than nothing. But some of the things that Mayor Levesque said aren't very correct. If somebody's going to come in here and do a good job in this committee, they're not going to do just 50% in the 10 acres and forget about other things. It's a holistic thing. You can't just examine the ag zone in Auburn. It's a tax issue, a big tax issue. And he said before that he wanted to broaden the tax base. Well, that means everybody pays more taxes, not just the ag zones, everybody. Probably the ag zone would double in taxes. And that isn't what the ag people really want. Now, that's a long story. I'd have to build up on that a little. Another thing that's inconsistent is when I asked the clerk if she got my application for the new thing. She said she did, and I said, well, it's kind of funny. He said 90 days tonight. That was 9/10/18. And I said, in the paper that we got, it said 60, and you verified that, dug that out. Then in the newspaper, it came out it's going to be 6 months. Well, he's as mixed up as we are as some of these things. So anyway, maybe we've got a full-time commissioner. You give him time enough, he'll let us be the thing forever. But I really don't think that some of those folks that were on that want to do the same thing again. I was new at computers still. I don't know much about it, but those threads they'd get so completely confusing. You'd have to read back and read back. You couldn't follow where you'd come from. I think Joe made that comment. I think Mia Pross made that comment. We were getting tangled up with just too much complication. There ought to be some ground rules set as to how we deal with this. I agree with Dan that a month isn't enough to do an in-depth study. We've already done it. I think maybe an agenda item and have some of those people that have got something to say might be able to steer you to some of the important things that didn't appear to come up in that presentation we made on July 16th. That's my thoughts about the thing.
Thank you.
May I ask him a question?
Yeah, Counselor Gary.
If we, by chance, cut to the chase and form this new commission, would you want to serve on it? And if so, we've got to create another form or tell you to fill out another form since you filled out one for this ad hoc commission.
You'll have plenty of time for that.
Well, I know that, but I want him to be upfront with him and give him time to think on it.
Well, I don't need much time to think on it.
There you
Yeah, I'd
go.
probably fill it out,
Okay.
but I'd reserve the right not to volunteer if some of this stuff I just complained about doesn't get fixed.
There you go.
I know.
Yes, I'll fill out another one.
Bill, before you leave,
We leave or I leave? Am I-
sit down. No, I think, I was interested, I think, in comments that you made some time ago. We have to be careful. You know, right now, even with forestry, that, you know, within the ag zone, what is 75% forest? That, you know, right now, as owners of forest land, those owners are willing to pay, you know, taxes based on ag zoning. If we open up, you know, the zone and see more residential type development, then of course taxes are based upon sales of real estate. Then suddenly, you know, within the ag zone, prices might go up or taxes might go up. But there's a state program where, especially if we have a lot of forest, owners could put their forest land into a state program. Of course, it requires, you know, a management plan, but actually, where do those, what happens?
What would happen, I think, if this ag zone tax changed more to like rural resource or rural residential, whatever that next zone is up, taxes right now in the ag zone on farm and agricultural land, my land anyway, is 1/10 of what it is in rural residential. So what would happen if that tax goes up in there, people would go into tree growth tax. And that's about half what the tax is in the ag zone right now. So if you put your land in tree growth, you encumber the land in that you can't develop it. You can sell off and develop some, but you have to take that out and there's a penalty for that. But ag zone land is valued about $800 an acre in the ag zone in Auburn. In tree growth, it's the state law. If you go into tree growth, it's about $400. So your tax base drops in half. And there'd be a great influx into tree growth, I'm sure. People that want trees, want open space, they'd take that risk and say, well, we're going to put it in tree growth. So that would switch that tax burden right back onto the rural residential owners, city dwellers. That's probably what would happen.
Yes, thank you. That was, I think, information that we all should realize. Again, it's consequences that need to be considered as we
Yeah.
move forward.
Yeah, pretty sure that's what would, a lot of that would happen.
I got a question for you. You say that the timber is about 75% of the agricultural land out there, the timber growth?
Yep.
How much of that timber growth is actually timber, and how much of it is just
Scrub.
scrub just grown up in fields that have been sitting there doing nothing?
Well, the town, the city of Auburn, Leroy, has an excellent mapping system. And they should probably have a forester working in the city office that in their spare time could type out some of that. And they could tell pretty close what the productivity of that land is. Probably 3/4 of that or 80% of it is pretty good forest growth. And some of it is wetland and rather poor growth. The state average for growth is about 1/3 of a cord per acre per year, and that's an okay number. But there's a lot of our land here that are growing a cord per acre per year. So I can't give you that estimate, but I'm going to guess 75% forest, probably 50% of it is real good forest land. And you did notice the first thing that Jason Levesque said about China was they want our trees.
Yeah.
And in this first meeting here, or one of the meetings I went to, he said, we got to get rid of these trees and make farms and make houses and stuff. Well, by gosh, he found out different already.
Yeah, yeah.
I like that. I'm very happy to hear about that.
I look back at a couple maps that go back many, many years. I think it was over 100 years ago. And half of South Auburn was all fields. And now they're all trees, but I don't believe the people are allowing it to grow trees for their benefit. I think they didn't want to farm it any longer. They didn't want to do whatever it takes to keep it fields, so they just let it grow up. And I have a hard time to believe that people are actually growing the trees to make a profit from them, or in the end, they will strip the land like they did on the Fickett Road. If you went down there and look at that, there isn't a twig standing on, 50 acres? Is that what all the farmers or tree growth people are going to do moving forward in the South Auburn? Because that's what's happening down there. People are just stripping their land, and I don't know if it's they're afraid of what's coming in the future or what, but we have to have something that controls that as well.
Well, state law, the Maine Forest Practices Act is the state law. You can't click out over a certain size. Every forest operation that's out there is supposed to have a notification and the intent of what you're trying to do, whether it's a silvicultural cut, a regeneration cut, a shelterwood cut. That has to have a plan. And clear cutting is one of them. There's an acre restriction on it. You can't go over that acres without planting or reserving something else somewhere else that applies to that. I don't know what the owners wanted done on the Fickett Road.
But there's not a twig left that's going to grow. It'll have to come back natural.
Leroy, it'll always grow. Those pastures and farmlands have grown up. That's what I've cut on my land for the last several years, was pasture pine. Pine pulp wasn't worth much, but I cut it, and that's grown since I was a kid. And that's like 60 years, and there's pine in there that big. So I don't know the specifics of that lot over there you speak of, but it will grow back. And that's one thing between a farmer and a woods guy. You can be a very passive woods person, and your forest will grow. You don't have to cultivate it, you don't have to spray it, you don't have to weed it or fertilize it. It'll grow all by itself, and you can be a passive owner of land, and that's what you'll have as a forest. And it will grow at 1/3 of a cord per acre per year. Auburn is not in the statewide standards. They don't take advantage of all the state benefits that the municipality could have. Ought to think about it, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You're very informative.
The colleagues would speak, they've got.
Any more discussion on the,
Oh,
Mr. Herrick.
Mr. Herrick's got a second ticket.
Real quick.
No, that's okay.
I know you want to go home, so do I.
Right.
Commission. There was, when this first came about, I think there was a confusion between committee and commission. Well, a commission, and it makes sense to have one, but only if that commission has power. That commission sits with the planning board it still has no power for you people.
That's right.
You people are the policymakers, the decision makers, and the rule makers. You can change it. So if you have a commission sitting there with a whole bunch of good, knowledgeable people, they're coming up with ideas, I bring them a plan that I want to do, they approve it. What good is that? Does nothing. You people override the planning board all the time. When I was a councilor, I overrode the planning board. Took their affirmative ideas, took their ideas, twisted them, tweeted, whatever. Then we made our own decision and it passed. A commission is only as good as what you people want to make that commission. The appeals board in this city is the highest court. They overrule all you people all the way through us. And all they are is just ordinary off-the-street people that got appointed to the appeals board that change people's lives. That appeals board changes people's lives. Now, in order for any commission to work in this city, and I think it could, but someone's got to give that commission enough power as if it was the appeals board when an issue came forward. That's why I'm saying 95% of the issues that would come in front of that commission would be the 50% rule, the 10-acre rule, the setback rule, the building rules. I think you could solve a lot of issues if they came forward bit by bit. I'm saying January. How about shorten that time up if we brought you a 50% rule in what we recommend? What we've decided as a group of people on the 50% rule. Bring it to you, because it's going to take you people 2 workshops or 1 workshop and 2 meetings. First reading and second reading. It's got to go to the newspaper. So you get a month. You've lost a month on every single item that needs to be changed in this Chapter 60, I believe it is, in the Ag Zone Resource Protection and the code enforcement books, land ordinances. So it's just something to think about. You know, like I said before, I don't care which way you people go. I got not a dog or a pony in the race, whatever you want to do. But we can sit here all night and decipher whether or not we want a commission, whether or not we want to change this, whether we want to change that. You people need something before you can decide to bring it back to the public for input.
Okay, thank you.
So I think that we've kind of decided that we want to move forward with that idea, I think, have we, as a council?
Yes. Yes, definitely.
At least we can get more information and we can have some debate on specifically how that would look.
Yep.
True?
Yep.
Okay.
All set.
Any more?
No.
Then if nobody has any more, then we'll close this workshop, and that will be the end of the evening. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.